The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. It's Wednesday. We love Wednesday because a lot happens on Wednesdays. I know a lot happens on all days, but Wednesdays tend to be a little busier here. And one of the reasons why it's one of my favorite days, there's two different people who come into the studio on a regular basis on Wednesday. At 10 o'clock, we're going to be joined by Evelyn Gould, who is a BCBA, a board-certified behavior analyst. She's wonderful. I just love that as a parent, she gives me permission to have all the feelings that I have and gives me strategies to work through them so that I can show up for my child in a better way. And today, she's going to be talking to us about bullying, which it's a subject that we all need to talk about, and she's got some really interesting things to say about that, and I'm interested to hear that, and I hope you are too. Then at 11 o'clock on Wednesdays, I'm joined by the truly amazing, fierce autism mom, Nancy Jackson. She's the executive director of Autism Care and Treatment Today, and I know I mentioned to you guys yesterday, and I'm going to mention it again today. Right now, ACT Today, Autism Care and Treatment Today, is in a grant phase, which means that you can go on their site right now, www.act-today.org, and you can apply for a grant for what you need. And that's what I love about this organization. They've given away over $500,000 in the last 3 years to families for the kinds of things that families ask for. So if you feel like what would really benefit your child is an iPad, then you can ask for that. If what you really need is a fence because your child is an eloper and you want some support and some ABA to go along with that so that over time you can work on that elopement, but in the meantime you need a fence to keep your family safe, or if you need a trampoline, whatever it is, whether it's that you need help with copay because you now have insurance, but you've got to make that copayment, whatever it is that you need help with, that's what you can ask for, and that's what they give grants for. So I hope you visit. There's only a couple of days left in this grant phase, and it's going to take you a couple of days to do the paperwork on it, right? But really beneficial. I will tell you they have a waiting list. So there's no guarantee that your grant will be met, and we're always asking anybody who wants to do any fundraising to help ACT Today out so that more families don't have to wait on the waiting list. But I have to say, so beneficial. Apply for the grant. Apply for the grant. It's a wonderful thing. But in any case, Nancy, who's the executive director of that wonderful organization, always joins me on Wednesdays at 11 o'clock for an hour that we call Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. And today we're very excited because the fabulous autism advocate, mom, actress, celebrity, Holly Robinson Peete is going to be with us. I'm going to try to not get all emotional and slobbery, but you know how there are just some people that are kind of touchstones in your life that you kind of look at and you feel like you know them. And I have met Holly before, and she's a wonderful, wonderful person. And I've only met her briefly, let's say that. But she's one of those people that I always sort of saw, when she was on Hanging with Mr. Coop, when her husband asked her to marry him, it was on the set. And I remember seeing that and saying, oh my gosh, that's just the most romantic thing I've ever seen. I just thought it was so amazing. And over the years, she was just somebody who popped up in my life from time to time, and that I always looked to and saw, she's so beautiful, and she seems like she has it all figured out. And, then, of course, she was on Oprah when she was pregnant with her twins. And to me, that was always the ultimate, pregnant with twins. That's the height of womanhood. My sister had twins, and I just always wanted to be somebody who had twins. So I looked at her and, oh, look, she's having twins, and Oprah showed her nursery, and I was like, oh, look at this wonderful life that this woman has. And I've said on the show before, I'm a huge fan of Oprah, and my son says about Oprah, says, you say to him, who's mommy's fairy godmother? And he says, Oprah, because in my life, whenever I needed a little pick-me-up, a little put me back together, information or something, I would turn on Oprah, and there it would be. There would be the thing that I wanted information about, sort of miraculously. And shortly after, and I had not kept track of Holly for a couple of different years, and shortly after my son was diagnosed, in that period of time when you are a little bit lost, you're still in the grief, and you don't know what you're going to do, and you don't know how to, label it even. What are you going to call it? How are you going to be? Who are you going to be on this journey with your child? You just haven't figured it all out yet. And as I was saying yesterday, there was a moment in time when I was like, man, am I going to be able to do this? Do I have it within me to rise to this occasion? I don't know, right? And I turned on Oprah, and there was Holly Robinson Peete. All right, there I go. I'm going to get emotional. But there she was, and I didn't realize that one of her twins, in this idyllic world that I had built in my head of her life being married to an NFL superstar who proposes to her on a set, and that she has twins and has this lovely nursery and is friends with Oprah, I didn't know that one of her twins had been diagnosed with autism. And here I was in this place of saying, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know if I have it in me. And I turn on Oprah, there she is, and she says, yeah, my son was diagnosed with autism. And she was standing up straight, sitting up straight anyway, and she was talking and saying, this is not the end of the world. He's doing wonderfully. We're working through it. There are things that families need to know. And let me just tell you, it was a turning point for me. And it made me sit up a little bit taller. It changed the way, and I've shared this before on the show, that moment with her on Oprah changed the way we languaged how we talk about autism, that we stopped saying that our son was autistic and started, because I know some of you, that's the right term for your child, and I totally respect that. But I couldn't get it to fit on my body. I couldn't get it to fit on his body. It wasn't working for me. I believe that words are powerful, and you got to have the right words for you. And I totally welcome you to say what your words are, but autistic wasn't working for me. And Holly had said something on the show that kind of made me question how I wanted to refer to it. And I decided in that moment that I thought has autism. My son has autism because it's just one of the things that he has, right? Which was much better. It still didn't fit completely right. And over the months that followed, I finally, after we did a bunch of research on ABA, I said to my husband, you know what I want to say, how I want to refer to this? I want to say that our son is recovering from autism. That's what I want to say, because that's where I want to go. I want for him to heal the things that need to be healed and not be held back anymore. So that's how we came, that's the progression of how we came to that term, and it really started with Holly Robinson Peete. And as I said, she's always been somebody that I just kind of have looked to. For years, I thought she had the perfect life. And then I found out in the moment when I felt like my perfect life had shattered, I turned and saw that she does have the perfect life, as perfect as anybody can ever have, and that I share in this club with her, and that it's okay not to be perfect, and really there is no such thing as perfect. So she's, one of those people in my life that has been an inspiration to me, is what I'm trying to say. So I'm thrilled that she's going to be here with us, thrilled that I'm going to sit here with her and Nancy Jackson, because Nancy Jackson is another one of those people that, man, when I couldn't get my hair washed and couldn't get outside the house and was feeling so sorry for myself, I saw Nancy Jackson raising money for autism and making a difference. And her shoes matched her pocketbook. When that was in style. I know it's not anymore, but she always had it all pulled together, and I would look at her and go, man, I can't even get my hair washed. So two of my inspirations that I'm going to be sitting between later on today. So I'm thrilled, and I hope that you guys will take the opportunity during that hour to ask the kinds of questions that you want to ask these two amazing women. I'm going to be sitting here and asking the questions that you guys ask. I'm here on your behalf. I'm excited on your behalf because I know that these two women are incredible. And if you haven't had the opportunity to hear Holly Robinson Peete speak, she's a force. You know, she is a force to be reckoned with. So she's going to be here at 11 o'clock, and I couldn't be more thrilled about it. And I hope that you are too. Let's talk about some of the different ways that you can participate every day, but especially this day with Holly Robinson Peete. If you're watching us on autism-live.com, then you can see on your screen it says either rebroadcast or live. If it says live right now, then in fact we are live. And that question box that's there is active. You don't have to log in. You don't have to do anything except type in there, hit enter, and it shows up magically here on the screen. And I can ask your questions of Evelyn Gould, of Nancy Jackson, or Holly Robinson Peete. So take advantage of that. It's really easy to do. It's a simple way if you're watching us on autism-live.com. And that is where we broadcast live. I got all emotional. Okay. Now, if it says rebroadcast, then you're going to participate in some delayed gratification. Or if you're watching us on any of the other different places that we rebroadcast, same thing. So we're going to go through some of the different ways that you can get a hold of us then. And by the way, you can also do this when we're live. It's just, you know, whatever's easiest for you. So you see there's an email address on your screen. You can email us anytime, any day, wherever you are in the world. When we get your email, we will cover your question on the next available live show. Even if you have a question for Holly Robinson Peete that comes in later, we will forward that off to her and get back to you with an answer, with a response. Sometimes it takes a couple of days, right? So patience is involved, and like I said, it is delayed gratification, but you can always email us and participate in the conversation. Let us know your thoughts, your concerns, things you'd like to see, people you'd like to see on the show, and we will chase that down for you. Also, you can phone into the show. We always have the phone line open during the live show. You can phone into us. If you'd like to, we can patch you directly into the studio. Now, if you're shy and you don't want to be patched into the studio, that's okay. We have people standing by to answer your phone calls. And if it's not during the live show, you can leave a message and we will get back to you as soon as we're back in the studio. By the way, you can also Skype in. We love to Skype. You can Skype from anywhere around the world. Remember that we're live from 9 a.m. to noon Pacific Standard Time. So do the math wherever you are in the world, and we're happy to have you Skype in with us. You can Skype in audio only, or you can do picture and sound if you have the camera capability on your computer. We really enjoy talking to you in that way. Another way that you can participate, whether it's live or rebroadcast, is through Facebook. We always put the question of the day on Facebook. We love interacting with you guys, and we love the fact that you interact with each other on the question of the day. But you can also be asking questions on Facebook, things that you want to ask Holly Robinson Peete, Evelyn Gould, any of the other guests that we have on the show. Really enjoy. And by the way, while you're there, will you give us a like? Because we appreciate that deeply. We find it reinforcing. We talk about reinforcing our children. We find that reinforcing when you like us on Facebook. And you can always tweet with us. I know some of you have already started tweeting in questions for Holly Robinson Peete today. We're thrilled about that. Tweet away. We are happy to interact with you in that way. So, The phone is open, the Skype channel is open, the tweet is open, and Facebook is ready for you. How are you going to participate today? We hope you will. I mentioned that there were other ways for you to watch our show if you're not watching us live on autism-live.com. And by the way, on autism-live.com, we air the live show, and then throughout the day, we rebroadcast the most recent shows. So whenever you turn us on, you'll see something here on the show. But you can also watch us on blip.tv. We archive all of our episodes there so that you have the opportunity to search back. If you missed last Tuesday, well, we weren't on live last Tuesday because I was on break. But the Tuesday before, we had a great show with a great guest. And if you wanted to go back and look at it, you certainly could. Just put in the date on Blip and you can search different topics. You can search dates. You can pause, you can fast forward, you can rewind and listen to something over and over and over again. If there's something that's really substantially important to you that you go, okay, I almost got that, but I want to rewind, you can do that on blip.tv. By the way, you can also do that on our YouTube channel. And what I love about YouTube, it has the full episodes, but it also has little snippets so that if you only got 10 minutes and you want to watch something that you want to find out about self-stimulatory behavior or stereotypy or challenging behavior or tantrums, or how to set your child up for success at school, or how to deal with toileting, how to teach a specific skill like riding a bicycle, those kinds of things, shoe tying, those kinds of things. You can search a topic on YouTube and find shorter segments on YouTube that are bite-sized, sometimes more appropriate for the amount of time that you've got. You can also download our full episodes with picture on iTunes. This is a great way. It's a free download. By the way, all the different places that you can watch us totally free to you. This is content that we want you to have and to converse with us about. So iTunes, free download, picture and sound. You can archive it yourselves, be pausing, rewinding, take it with you on vacation because sometimes you leave and leave your service providers behind to go on vacation and you just need a little oomph to know what to do when you're in different situations with your child. So you can take us with you. And by the way, we are also available on Ustream. That's just another way that you can watch us, and we thank Ustream for that. Okay, so that's all the different ways that you can watch us. We are going to be live with you for the next 3 hours, talking about topics having to do with autism. And I will tell you that a lot of what we talk about is ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis. And I say that unapologetically. I know it maybe isn't the most scintillating conversation for some people, but as a parent, and that's what I am, I'm a parent of a child who was diagnosed at the age of 2.5. He's now 9, and he's doing so well because we were fortunate enough to have access to ABA, and not just any ABA, really the best ABA on the face of the earth from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And if I seem like I'm a huge champion of ABA, it's because I am. This is what gave us our child back. I refer to it as the autism miracle in our living room. It is not just me saying that this is great, though. I want you to know that. It's been scientifically proven to be effective for autism. Somebody said to me last week, what is with all this insurance? How come it took so long, and why is it all working out now? What happened that now insurance reform is happening for autism? And I said, you know what happened? Enough research was done to show that ABA was effective, that the insurance companies couldn't use the excuse that they had been using for decades, which it was, we don't have to fund it because there's nothing been proven to be effective. And they couldn't hide behind that anymore because the research has been done. Over 20 years worth of research shows that not only is ABA effective for treating autism, it's effective for all of our children. And I want you to hear that, because I think the thing that's the most disappointing to me is that I hear constantly from parents when I'm out and talking to parents, and everywhere I go, the numbers are in 1 in 88, 1 in 54 boys, but everywhere I go, my husband, I'll start a conversation with somebody that I meet at a party or at a baseball field or at a park, and we'll be talking about something completely unrelated to autism, and then autism comes up in the conversation. It just does. It's my life. I'm sure that happens to you guys too. And what I discover is that all these people that I meet have some connection to autism, whether it's their child, their nephew, their niece, their granddaughter, their grandson, everybody, or their best friend's nephew. Everybody has some sort of connection. And what I'm most disheartened to hear is that I say, have you tried ABA? And what comes in that next sentence just pains me, because usually it's, oh no, this child is so profoundly affected by autism that ABA won't work. Not true. ABA works for all of our children, helping them to gain progress. All of the outcomes are different, right? But progress is available. Even if a child is profoundly affected and has other diagnoses to go with their autism, ABA can help. Or I hear the complete opposite of the conversation, and somebody says to me, well, this child's very high functioning. They're doing really well. They're in high school. There's just a couple of things, so ABA isn't appropriate for them. Wrong, wrong, wrong. ABA is so very very appropriate for that child, because all you have to do is go in and do a couple of different things and this child can fly. ABA is effective for all of our kids on the spectrum because it's effective for all of us as well. It's a science of behavior, and we're all engaged in behavior, all of us, you and I. If you learn the tools of ABA and learn how to apply them very creatively to your individual child, because none of our children are the same, there is no cookie cutter, right? But you learn the tools, you learn how to use all these different tools, what you will discover is that your life will be enriched, your relationships will get better, you're going to look at the world in a different way, and it's going to make more sense, and you're going to be able to build communication with your child, and they're going to make progress. And that is why I'm here, because that's exciting to me. That's exactly what happened in my life with our child. And by the way, my child is not unique. I mean, he's unique in his own way, but how ABA was effective for him, not unique at all. He in fact has not had, there's different outcomes. He has not had the big, stellar, wonderful outcome. He is not yet deemed recovered from autism, but I gotta tell you, he gets closer every day. And he's pretty spectacular. So that's why we talk about ABA. But I want you to know, I am not an expert in ABA, and I do not ever want to pretend to be an expert in ABA. I am not an expert in parenting. I am not even an expert in my own child, as he pointed out to me yesterday. I like to think that I'm an expert in my child, but he reminds me all the time, he's growing, changing, and I need to keep pace, right? So I am not the expert, which is why we bring experts in here to talk to you. And I want to be your conduit to those experts. So I'm just the woman who's been doing this for a while, that learned a couple of things, but not an expert. I know some questions to ask, but I'm counting on you to help me on this journey. Tell me what questions you want answered. Tell me what's going on for you in your house, what's really holding you back, holding your child back. I want to help you to be the most effective, efficient member of your child's team that you can be, because I know that that's when your stomach lining feels better. When you're in that space where you go, I'm showing up for my kid and I'm learning new things every day and it's helping me to help my child, boy, that's when we all get to sit up straight, like I saw Holly Robinson Peete doing on Oprah. And that's what I want for you. Okay, so that's what we're here about. We like to start every morning with something that I fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is the time of day when we take those ridiculous terms that the experts use that mean nothing to us when we start out on this journey, and we try to make sense of them. We give you an actual definition for the term first, and then we give you a somewhat watered down but a little bit more user-friendly version of the definition, so that you can begin to start to understand it and start to apply it to your individual child. It's a process, right? Just like how we teach our children, we want to give them ample opportunities to learn something, and we want to pare it down to these bite-sized morsels so that they can have success. That's what I'm trying to do in terms of the jargon. Because you got to make friends with the jargon. You have to. I know I resisted for a while, and now I'm a believer in the jargon. It speeds things up. It makes you more efficient, more effective. Okay, so we've been talking about different kinds of reinforcement all week. We had conditioned reinforcer, then we had differential reinforcement yesterday, and now we have non-contingent reinforcement. Oh, I know, the headache starts here, right? Stick with me, don't leave, it's gonna be okay, I promise. All right, so our actual definition is a procedure in which stimuli with known reinforcing properties are presented on a fixed time or variable time schedule. All right, I know. I love to make fun of these definitions because you go, huh? What? I know what most of these words mean, but when you put them all together like that, I'm a little overwhelmed, right? Okay, so let's take it to our working definition. The child is given reinforcement on a schedule regardless of whether they have demonstrated a behavior or not. Okay, why on earth would we want to do that, right? Well, there are some things and sometimes when this is going to be appropriate. I would suggest that you be working always with a BCBA who is experienced with autism that's helping you to design your program. Because there are a lot of things that you're going to learn, right? But at least having access to somebody that you're consulting with is going to make you more effective, more efficient. So there are going to be times when your BCBA is going to say, in this particular instance, having looked at what's going on with the child, it may be because it's difficult to provide reinforcement in a specific way, but sometimes as an antecedent modification, I know I just used another jargon term, right? When we look at behavior, we look at it the ABCs. Something happens before, that's the A, the antecedent. Then the behavior happens, and then there's a consequence. Just remember the ABCs. Every behavior you do, every behavior I do, ABC. Something happens. That's the toughest word, antecedent. Something happens right before the behavior happens, and then there's a consequence. This is behaviors that we love to see, and this is behaviors that we find very challenging, right? There's always that A antecedent, the behavior, the consequence. What we know is it's really hard to change behavior, right? That's when we get into that business of saying to the child, stop that, stop that. Why are you still doing that? Could you stop that? And we might as well be talking to our hand, right? It's so not effective. We all do it. I still do it. And then I remind myself, why am I beating my head against that wall? I know, or we try to physically, hold, the child's banging the chair, and so we try to hold their foot and say, stop that, I'm talking to you, stop. It doesn't work, right? And they get to a point where you can't physically hold them. It's not effective. But we don't really have control over the behavior, but we do have a whole lot of control of what happens before and a whole lot of control of what happens after. Well, sometimes we target the before. So, for instance, if there's a child that we know gets bored and likes to get attention, we might just give them non-contingent reinforcement. We're going to give them attention on a regular schedule so that we head off the boredom and head off the need to ask for attention, to even ask for it. So they're not going to do anything. They're not going to accomplish anything. We're just going to shower them with attention. We're just going to give them that reinforcement on a regular basis. That's an antecedent modification because what we're hoping to do is prevent the circumstance where the behavior needs to happen. How brilliant is that, right? I'm a former teacher, and one of the first things that I learned in the classroom long before I knew about ABA is that there are different kinds of kids, right? And there are some kids, boy, they are the toughest kids in the classroom but they're the easiest ones to modify what's going on, the kids who are driven by attention. You know who I'm talking about. You may have that child or you may know that child, that they're busy pants, right? They're constantly into everything and doing everything, and it doesn't matter to them whether the attention is good or bad, right? They just want attention, and you're trying to get something done, you're trying to teach something, and they're right? But one of the first things that I learned as a teacher is to take that child and shower them with attention, give them a job, compliment them on the job, constantly be saying to them, you're doing an awesome job. It feels like it's going to take more time, but except it doesn't. It's so much easier to shower with attention, which in this case is that non-contingent reinforcement. They didn't have to do anything, and I'm giving it to them. I'm just going to give it. I'm going to feed that bank so that I never get to the point where they are having to act out. And there are other times in which we're going to use non-contingent reinforcement. But attention is a really good example of why we would do it. We do it so that we don't get to the point where the behavior has to happen. Okay? It's not, they don't have to do anything to get it. They don't have to be superlative, although if you catch them being superlative, extra reinforcement for that, but you're given reinforcement. So our hope is that we've created an environment in which the behavior doesn't even have to happen. All right, that is our jargon term for the day. Let's talk about the question for today. Every day we give you a question of the day, and we love it when you guys participate on Facebook or you tweet and talk to each other about it. It's a really fun time of the day. If you could change one thing, what would it be and why? If you could change one thing, what would it be and why? And I looked at this, we decide these questions like a month in advance, and I looked at this morning and I thought, oh my gosh, I don't know what I would change and why. Because I'm a big believer that, and I've come to peace with a lot of the things that have happened over the years in terms of the autism stuff. The thing that I haven't made total peace with, I'm going to be honest, and this occurs to me right in the moment, is that there is a part of me that still longs for that idyllic time that I was so looking forward to when my child was 2 to 3. That time, one of my favorite songs is The House on Pooh Corner, and that whole, because I only have the one child, although we're, talking about expanding, adopting. Hasn't happened yet, but we're talking about it. But in any case, I was so looking forward to, I waited really long to be a mom, and I was looking forward to that period of time when you sit on the grass with the child and they're looking at the flower and you're looking at the flower and you're seeing the world through their eyes. And I had plans for that time, and I waited a really long time for it, but I built up all these expectations, and we all know that's not a good idea, right? But I didn't have that. That is not what I had. When my child was 2, he was descending into this world where I couldn't reach him. And then when he was 3, we were on a treadmill to get him back. So we didn't have time to lay in the grass and look at the flower and play with the bubbles. And, if there's one thing, I'm not going to be able to change it though, right? So I got to find peace with it, and I'm working on it. I'm definitely working on it. And I'll tell you when I get closest to it is when I appreciate what I have now. That now, the other day I went to the Getty Museum with my child, and we sat there on the grass and looked at the museum and had time together and had conversation. So I gave up. I didn't give it up. It was taken away from me when he was 3, but I got to appreciate what I have now. But I would love to hear from you. If you could change one thing, what would you change and why? You can write into us on Facebook now on our Autism Live Facebook page, or you can write into us on Twitter. You can Skype in. You can email us, but let us know if you could change one thing. What would it be and why? All right. We always have a topic of the day for you. The topic of the day has sort of morphed into the topic of the week. And this week it's problem solving. Because we know there are problems coming, right? And by the way, that's true of everybody. There are times when I look at my child and especially for the younger years, I would look and go, okay, this is something that's happening. Is this age appropriate, or is this something that's happening in conjunction with autism? And sometimes it was one and sometimes it was the other. And I don't know that it was necessarily important that I discern which one it was, but I like to know as I was problem solving. And I think it's really important that we know that people who have children that are not on the spectrum are also problem solving too. Yes, our problems are different. And we get that. They don't get that, but we do. But we know that we have to get good at problem solving. And I mentioned yesterday, this is something we need to model for our children, because we're teaching them when we start in on executive functions that they're going to have goals in their life, things that they want to achieve. And whether it's that they want to be able to pull up their own pants and button them, or they want to go to college and have a job and, those kinds of goals, whatever. Goals are goals, and they want to be able to achieve their goals. And we need to look at that very seriously and give them the tools to be able to achieve those goals. And part of achieving a goal is to know what you want, to give yourself a timeline, to be accountable for it, and to frequently check in and see if what you're doing is working, and if it's not, to problem solve, and to problem solve effectively. So we want to model that for our kids. What are our goals? And we know that problems are going to happen. We don't want to set ourselves up to this whole thing of, well, it's all going to be hearts and flowers and roses, because that would be under the heading of expectations that don't go well. So we always want to be problem solving. I used to always refer to challenging behavior as bad behavior or problem behavior. And somebody pointed out to me, they were like, why are you trying to label things as good or bad? Why don't you it's a challenge. It is an absolute challenge, but you're up to a challenge, right? And I went, oh, okay, yeah, you're right. So I think that part of our attitude, not that we say, oh, this isn't a problem, right? Because challenging behavior is problematic, but that it is a challenge that we are going to find a way to overcome. I love working in this building where I work because the people that I work with on a daily basis, there are times when I get overwhelmed. I just do. I don't know whether that's just me but I get absolutely overwhelmed. And the people that I work with that are BCBAs, they're like, well, let's find the solution. There's always a solution. Let's work it out. Let's sit down and figure it. And they are so calm about it that I go, oh, yeah, right, there's a solution. I can be in the solution, not the problem. So we're going to be talking about problem solving today, and boy, Evelyn Gould, fabulous at this. I'm taking lessons from her. I'm learning at the feet of the master. So some of the things that we have going on today, in a little while, we're going to be giving you a tip about play, and at 10 o'clock, as I mentioned, we're going to be joined by BCBA Board Certified Behavior Analyst Evelyn Gould. We're going to be talking about bullying with her. You're not going to want to miss that. And then at 11 o'clock, let's talk autism with Shannon and Nancy. Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson will be here. And of course, the truly remarkable Holly Robinson Peete. I'm very excited about it. I hope you are too. Stick with us. We're going to take a break and be back with our play tip for the week. Currently, in the United States, 1 in 88 children is affected by autism. 1 in 88 means something different when your child is the one. Recovery is possible. Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, host of Autism Live, an online show about autism broadcast by CARD, the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I'm also the mother of a child with autism, my beautiful son, Jem. You know our old joke, guess what?
Chicken butt.
Chicken butt. So we're going to take the chickens. But things weren't always so easy. I remember when Jem was first diagnosed with autism. I used to lay awake at night in bed and pray for someone or something that could help us to get our child back. My prayers were answered by Dr. Doreen Graham-Pichet and the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. CARD treats autism and other related disorders using the principles of ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis, which is the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. It is also recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics and the U.S. Surgeon General. About a year after we started treatment with CARD, we were able to see tremendous improvement, and we got our child back.
What grade are you in?
Second.
You are a smart cookie, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Do you like school?
Yeah.
Do you have any good friends?
Yeah, Oscar.
Oscar is your best friend?
Yeah.
And my child is just one of thousands to benefit from CARD ABA therapy. Across the nation and around the world, children are making amazing progress and being given the keys to unlock their full potential.
We are extremely grateful for the amazing job CARD has done in helping our daughter. Our daughter today, just in 4 months, I think is a totally different child than when she started with CARD. I kind of see it as, it seems like her brain in a way was asleep, and now that we've gotten so many services, we've seen her wake up.
Teacher has some glasses.
Recovery is possible if you take the right steps, if you're willing to put in all the hard work. And 7.5 years, yeah, it's a lot of work. It's worth every little bit, and CARD's been there with us every step of the way.
I have 2 children with autism. I can't imagine a day without CARD or the therapists. They've been so instrumental in helping us with our kids and shaping their lives and helping us help them.
Thank you, Christina Big Alex.
Thank you, Jackie and Mariana.
We've tried other things before ABA, but the most beneficial thing has been ABA services, and I'd be the first person to tell any newly diagnosed family that you have to contact an ABA provider, and if you're lucky enough to have CARD, you're very blessed.
Recovery from autism is absolutely a possibility. We've been recovering children for over 20 years. It's just a matter of identifying the child's medical needs, understanding the child's sensory issues, and then teaching the child all of the skills they need in order to function normally.
We know there's hope for autism. Autism is treatable, and recovery from autism is possible.
I am grateful for Autism Speaks because they allow families like me to have hope.
They're working towards having these children live better lives.
There's a space for you. Yeah, there's a world for you, and there's a community that is behind you.
And one that has really been able to be the singular voice for people who are involved with and who care about autism.
I do have autism, but I don't let that become a disability for me. Autism Speaks is going to continue to help those who need it, and just look at all the stuff they've done so far and you will be impressed.
3, 2, 1.
And you need to support the walks. We have to raise awareness, but we also have to raise funds to do the work.
I'm grateful for Autism Speaks for one main reason, is they are allowing me to focus on the research.
The work that Autism Speaks has been doing is critical for keeping autism research on the radar screen.
We proclaimed 2 April as the World Autism Awareness Day. I'm very proud of the UN and thankful Autism Speaks.
Getting the health mandate bill passed in New Jersey particularly, we needed to be able to make an argument, not just do this because it's the right thing to do, but do it because it's cost effective.
When everyone else told me nothing was wrong with my son, I got information from a website that told me something wasn't right.
I am so proud of Autism Speaks for creating these beautiful ad campaigns, which have reached people who are not affected by autism and have also created a greater climate of compassion and understanding.
It's been really great for Bachman to have gotten involved with Autism Speaks early on. I think everybody here feels like they really make a difference.
To make sure that we generate as much money as we can for Autism Speaks so we can all solve this puzzle together.
There's no way we could have come this far without our families, without our supporters to date, but there's so much farther we have to go. And everybody's invited to join this cause. We need all the help we can get to make the difference we know we can make.
Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, and this is my son, Jem. We're here today at the Home Depot. You might know that Home Depot is famous for giving free classes to adults on lots of things like tiling and other home crafts. Well, they also have free classes for kids as well. It's called the Kids Workshop. We love doing that, don't we, Jem?
Yeah.
It's cool. So come on inside with us and let's do a craft.
Yay.
The Kids Workshop is a program that's been around with Home Depot almost since we've been a company, and it's been developed to allow kids in the community to come in and give them an opportunity to build something, to be able to create something and be able to take just simple wood pieces and put them together with nails and hammers and screwdrivers and then paint them.
So you do this every first Saturday of the month.
Any Home Depot that you go to on the first Saturday of every month between 9 and 12, you can join different associates throughout different stores and build these projects with these kids.
And do they have to do anything beforehand, or can they just show up on that Saturday?
All they need to do is show up. We have all the tools, all the materials that the kids will need. We have aprons that we give to the kids that they can take home and maintain their pins. They get pins on a regular basis for completing projects. With that, they can keep track of how many projects they've done. And
it's all free.
It's all absolutely free, all provided.
Which is wonderful. And Wilson, I have to say, you know, you guys devised this for all kids to be able to do this.
Correct.
What I particularly love about it as an autism mom, it gives my child a place to come and learn a new skill, to socialize with kids of all kinds.
Absolutely. And that's what we're here for. Home Depot is definitely loves to be involved with the community and bring the community in to work with us. That's what we love to do.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. It's the time of the week when we talk about the play tip for the week. And you know, one of the things that I most want to impress upon all of us, myself included, because I have to be reminded of this on a regular basis, that what our kids find reinforcing is not always what we think they should find reinforcing, right? So it is a common misconception when we have kids on the autism spectrum that we think, oh, they're going to love playing, and I'm going to get them a toy, and they're going to love playing with the toy. And there is that crushing disappointment when the baby or the child or the teenager or the adult doesn't find it fun, that they don't want to play with the thing that you've asked them to play with, or that they don't want to play at all. Really important to remember that for our kids, sometimes play, especially in the beginning, feels like work, or even like, so it's just boring, or even worse, that it's absolutely something that is negative for them. You know, I think about those cause and effect toys that light up and the things pop up, you know, and everybody's so thrilled to get that for the 18-month-old child, right? And they push the button and the little character pops up, the lights go off, and the sound goes, you know, and this really annoying thing that drives the parents crazy after a period of time. But everybody's so thrilled to put that in front of a baby that's sitting up. And some of our kids didn't find that reinforcing, would cry. When you push the button, the thing pops up and the child cries. Well, okay, that's emotional, but we have to realize that we can make that toy reinforcing. We might have to change some things, and I love that toys now have a thing on the, a lot of them, not all of them, have a thing on the bottom so that you can do the sound less loud, because it can be annoying, right? I feel like they put that on there for the parents, but it's really good for a lot of kids. It can be very overwhelming, some of the sounds that come from toys. And we can work towards individual toys being reinforcing to a child, but that's what we have to do, is work towards that. We talked at the beginning of the week about conditioned reinforcers. We take something that's already reinforcing for the child and we pair it with something we want to be reinforcing, and over time we see that it becomes reinforcing for the child. So we don't want to give up on play. We never want to give up on play. Play is really important to our child's development because along the way, it's going to help them to problem solve. It's going to help them to gain social skills. It's going to help them to gain language skills. It's going to help them to be calmer and have less anxiety. It is a really important thing. And as you're looking at building a program of ABA and you say, all right, well, we really want to work on language, right? We need for this child to be up to speed, caught up, speaking, conversing, all of these different things. We need to work on social skills, right? Everybody gets that. Everybody's 100%, and we want to work on challenging behavior. Everybody gets excited about those three things. And I get it. As a parent on this journey, those were the things that I was like, why are we talking about anything else, right? But play helps with all of those things and more. So don't leave it out of your child's schedule. It's a perfect opportunity to set things up to be reinforcing so that you can get to the harder things. I can remember very early on, my child, the way in which he played was so foreign to me that it was emotional for me. I wanted him to interact with me and he wasn't doing it. I wanted him to be excited by the things that other kids were excited by. He wasn't. And there was a part of me that thought, oh, well, and he never will be. That's the wrong kind of thinking, because eventually he worked towards the point where he finds all of that stuff very reinforcing now. So don't give up on it. Make it reinforcing by pairing other things with it to begin with. Very easy to do once you stop and plan it out. But I wanted to talk with you today about functional pretend play. This is a really important milestone in a child's life. If you go to a toy store, and I really encourage you to go to toy stores on a regular basis, and in fact, I love going to Toys R Us. There are other toy stores that are out there, but I love going to Toys R Us, and they have the differently abled catalog, which Holly Robinson Peete has been on the cover of before. It's a wonderful jumping off place to get ideas. But what I also like to do is take my child, still to this day, but when he was little, I would take him to the toy store and say, we're not buying anything, we're just looking today, right? I'd stick him in the cart and I would pile toys almost to the point where I couldn't see him, but not quite to that point, and have him play with individual toys while he was sitting in the shopping cart to see what he would keep going back to. And I could shop and look at other toys while he was doing that, but you know, he would play with a toy, and if I saw that he kept going back to the toy and liked that toy, there were some toys that instantly, you know, and I didn't spend money on those toys. If it was something that I thought was important that he play with, then I would spend the money on the toy, but we would pair it with other things for it to be reinforcing. But in any case, I digress. There is one entire aisle in most every toy store that is devoted to functional pretend play. A lot of times people refer to it as a girl aisle, people who don't know better. Because some of the things that are there would appear to be, you know, to some people, I don't know, I don't even want to say it, girl toys. But it's not. Functional pretend toys are for all children, and they're really beneficial for our children on the autism spectrum. The kinds of things that are in there are toys that are miniature plastic versions of real life things. So, you know, there's the food. They have the big boxes of plastic food, and you know, they have now, I mean, it's crazy the amount of stuff that they have. They have breakfast, lunch, dinner. You can get it for a specific restaurant. We in fact did that. One of the things that my son could eat on his diet was a Subway salad with chicken on it, because my son has a lot of dietary restrictions, but he could have a Subway salad. And so they had a little backpack that was filled with Subway food and little plastic representations, and so we got that for one of the things that he had for functional pretend play. Melissa and Doug makes a line of wood functional pretend toys that are their dream toys. And for wood solid toys that'll last you forever, they're very reasonably priced. They're going to be more expensive than the plastic toys, but if, you know, they're phenomenal. They're really well thought out, and they'll last, and they're non-toxic. But they'll have things like a birthday cake, and you put together the cake and you can put it different ways, and they have, you know, you can put the candles on it. They have pizzas, so they can make the pizza the way they want to make the pizza, and there's little magnets that go on so they can decorate it with the mushrooms or the pepperoni. They have toys, Melissa and Doug, where you can cut a sandwich, and you literally cut through, or you peel the orange and it comes apart in segments. They're brilliant. All of these toys are really, really important because they give us a jumping point off. They're great for labeling, so that, you know, when you're doing the different fruits and, you know, you've got the orange there and you say, what is it? It's an orange. Fabulous, right? So they're learning language skills. But then they're also going to learn in terms of social skills too, because we're going to encourage them and teach them how reinforcing it is to peel the orange themselves and to ask mommy if mommy wants a segment of orange, and then mommy gets a chance to interact. You're setting up all kinds of environments in which a child has the opportunity to problem solve in a way that is really rewarding, and there aren't any other senses, you know, because once we get into food, food is mushy, and it has smells, and sometimes it's really off-putting to children. But if you're working on it with plastic food, then, I don't know, there is an element of it that makes it easier. You've removed some of the different things that could be a sensory for them and left the stuff that's really positive, and you can have the interaction. And it can go from functional pretend play to natural environment training, right? So you're there and you've got the little plate and you're pouring the tea with the little teacups, and you've got the orange and you're peeling the segments, right? And the child is learning how to interact without those other senses. And in a couple of days, you can turn it into a tea party that has actual orange segments, and see that the child is able to generalize the skills that they learned with the functional pretend play. There's so many different things. You know, one of the things that we got early on, because my son loved the vacuum cleaner, was obsessed with the vacuum cleaner, we got a pretend vacuum cleaner. So I could vacuum and he could vacuum, and you know, you can poo-poo it, but it was a way in. And we're always looking for that way in, the thing that's really reinforcing to the child so that they want to interact with you. And we had a hard time with joint attention in the beginning, but I'm vacuuming, he's vacuuming, I'm looking at him going, you're doing such a good job, we're vacuuming together, we're getting that joint attention, which builds up into so many other things. So functional pretend play, crazy, crazy good for our kids. We have to go at it with the attitude that in the beginning, They may not find it reinforcing. That's okay. We're going to pair it with other things that they do find reinforcing. We're going to add praise onto it always, because eventually we're going to pull out the thing. You know, let's say that the child finds it so reinforcing to watch cartoons. So we're going to somehow put cartoons along with doing the functional pretend play, or make it the reward for doing functional pretend play eventually. And we're going to praise, eventually phase out the cartoons so they're just finding it fun to do the functional pretend play with us praising. And then of course over time we can also have the praise come at different times, not constantly, and wean them from that, so that at some point the child is just engaging in functional pretend play and we're not reinforcing it anymore because it's reinforcing in and of itself. Can you imagine how awesome that is? Really, really important. Of course, there are other things that we work up from functional pretend play to imaginary play to symbolic play to sociodramatic play, but we'll talk about all those things on another day. By the way, if you want more information about how you teach these things, I really want to encourage you to use the skills program. That's what I use at home. These are the exact same lessons that my son had, that therapists from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders used these lessons to teach him. And now that he's not having therapy anymore, I continue to use these lessons. And there are tons of lessons about functional pretend play and the imaginary play, symbolic play, sociodramatic play in the skills program. I encourage you to check it out. We are going to take a little bit of a break. We're going to watch The A Word, and this is the documentary that we watch every day, one segment of. It's being a documentary that's being made by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, following a little boy, Jack Riley, who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2. He is now 3. He's been getting therapy for about 8 months, and he is speaking in sentences and interested in people now where he was not before. One of the things we're going to see in today's episode is how they've been working on getting him to appropriately gain somebody's attention. I want to point out that all of these lessons can be tailored for an individual family and for the culture of the family. For this family, they decided that the way they wanted him to get someone's attention appropriately was to tap them on the shoulder and say their name. Now, in our family, when we were asked what would you like for him to do to gain attention, we decided that we would like for him to say, "Excuse me," and then wait. So it depends, but the lesson is still the same. You go about teaching it in the same way. It's just, what lesson are we teaching? Because we all have different things that we prefer. And I want you to know that ABA is not a cookie cutter, right? We get to decide what, I remember when they were teaching my son the labels for women and men, and they said, do you want us to say women or ladies? And it was a big discussion about, with my husband and I, about which one do we want it to be. And there are other, terms and other things, so you can always tailor it to what's right for your family, but we'll see that that's what this family has chosen. And there are some other things that he is working on, categories. So take a look. This is The A Word.
I know a cute little blue-eyed boy, and his name is Jack. Jack Riley. He got a big, warm, blue-eyed soul that makes your heart beat fast.
Hey, 2 seconds.
Oh, yes. Hi. What's up?
Can I put iPhone?
Later.
Jack Riley is now gaining attention without prompts. When first teaching a new skill, a therapist does errorless learning, which is prompting a child with the correct response. 4 months ago, when gaining attention was taught, Jack Riley needed a gesture, physical, and vocal prompt to do it. As time progressed, less prompting was needed, like using only a gesture prompt or a partial vocal prompt.
Sure, which one do you want?
Both.
Another skill they have been working on is categories. First, they teach it to him receptively.
Give me food. Where's the food? Good job.
Then they teach it to him expressively, first with prompts.
Tell me a furniture. Say Say a couch.
A couch.
Is a furniture.
Furniture.
Good. So tell me a furniture.
Couch.
Is a
couch.
Say couch is a
Furniture.
Good. So tell me a furniture.
Couch.
Is?
It's furniture.
Yeah.
And then without.
Tell me a food.
Okay. Apple is food.
Good. Tell me another food.
Watermelon is food.
Yay! Watermelon is a food. Come here. Oh, you're so smart.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and that was the A Word, this week's episode. I want to remind you that we watch one episode a week, and I love to take it apart. I love to talk about it and say, did you see this? Did you see that? But you can be watching all of the episodes in whatever manner. If you want to watch one a day, you want to watch all of them now, you can on their YouTube channel. There it is. Here's what I love about this series. How much time do we have? Not enough for me to talk about the things that I love about it. I love the fact that if you watch from the beginning, you will see the tremendous arc that takes place with ABA therapy. You see that, because you know, when you just see a little snippet, which is all I had ever seen was a little snippet of something online. Now you can watch a lot of little snippets, right? But you see one little individual skill being taught, and you think, okay, well, you know, really, how is this going to be this amazing thing that Shannon's always talking about? But imagine when you're putting together a puzzle, right? And you got one little piece of the puzzle, and you look at it and you can't see what it is. You have no idea what is it. It's got some blue on it. It's got some, I have no idea what this piece of the puzzle is. But you start to put it together with other pieces, and you see, oh, okay, oh, that's a dock. I see, that's what that is. And then you put it together with other pieces, and you end up with this beautiful, beautiful picture, right? And ABA really takes things down to that very minuscule level. Teaches one little skill here and one little skill here, one little skill here, and then you put these skills together, and what you have is a chain of behavior. And you put that chain of behavior together with this chain of behavior, with that chain of behavior, and what you get is a child who is learning and learning how to learn. It is amazing. It's life-changing. It's exciting to watch. I know in the beginning, I would, and even, you know, as the journey continued, there would be things, they'd be teaching my child something, and I'd go, what has that got to do with anything? How does that fit in? And then they would explain it to me, and I'd go, oh, okay. But more importantly, I got to see it in my living room. I got to see how this piece went together with this piece that opened doors for my child to whole new worlds. And I got to see that after the therapy was over, how he applied all of that to the world. Oh my gosh, it was so very exciting. And I try to explain it to people, and it's hard to explain. But when you see it, you get it. And so I love the fact that the A Word, you get to see it. You get to see this little boy who started out and was interested in things. And you get to see how they built in reinforcement, conditioned reinforcement, so that he started finding other things exciting. You get to see how now he has joint attention with his parents, that he watches something on TV and he turns and looks at them, did you see that? And then looks back at it and then checks back in, and how that skill builds into other things. So that now, 7-8 months later, we have a little boy who is so excited to interact with the people, not necessarily the toys. He's playing, and he knows how to play by himself, but given the choice, he would rather interact. And I know with my son that we would make progress, and I would always kind of gauge it by the birthday party thing. I would go to a birthday party, take my child, and we'd have been home doing therapy and maybe not have seen some of the people that were there for months on end, and my child would be at the birthday party, and people would go, what are you doing? Oh my gosh, he's doing so well. He just came up to me and he talked to me. What are you doing? And I would go, oh, ABA. And they'd go, oh, that's just amazing. That's just amazing. But they wouldn't have any idea all of the little individual steps and how hard my child worked, and how hard his therapy team worked, and how hard my husband and I worked to uphold what the therapy team was doing with him. Now you get to see it. You get to see what happens. Now, you don't get to see the whole thing, right? You get to see little snippets, but it's really well done so that you get to see the right snippets, so that you see the progression. Love that. I also love that you get to see the emotional journey that the parents take, because it's emotional, a roller coaster, right? And it's not the easiest thing to open up your house and your home and your life and say to a bunch of virtual strangers, come on in, help me parent, would you? Come on down. So excited that you're here. I don't have my laundry done. I don't have my life together today. And my husband and I are having an argument. Come on in, right? Because real life continues to happen while the therapists are in your house helping to create this miracle in your living room. And you get to see what it's like for a real family. The joys, the tears, the fears, right? Because your child takes 2 steps forward and then takes 1 step back, or a new challenging behavior crops up. And you think, really? I thought we were done with that. Because you're never done with that. Your children grow. They just do. And it's a wonderful thing. But as they grow, they find new things to make challenging. Think of the teenage years, right? So I love the show. I encourage you to watch it. Watch it from the beginning, and you'll learn about ABA, and you'll learn about giving your child functional communication skills, and you will learn why this is effective for all of our kids. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Okay, we got to take a break, and when we come back, Evelyn Gould is going to be with us, and we're going to talk about bullying, so don't go away.
Skills is a revolutionary web-based program that incorporates comprehensive assessment, curriculum design, progress tracking, and treatment evaluation for children with autism all in one place. Developed by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. Our approach is based on over 40 years of research on the principles of learning and their application to improving the lives of children with autism. How does Skills work? Created with speed and simplicity in mind, Skills was modeled on an easy 3-step process. Step 1. Start assessment. Step 1 begins with our intelligent assessment system, which consists of a series of questions. This assessment is essential to identifying your child's level of skills compared to their typical peers across all areas of development. This includes assessing social, motor, language, adaptive, play, cognition, executive functions, and academic skills. Every skill has an assigned age which indicates when the skill emerges during typical development. This means that each child is automatically presented only with lessons that are relevant to his or her age. Step 2. Choosing activities. It's now easier than ever to build an individualized treatment plan. In Step 2, you are presented with an individualized pool of activities that are directly linked to your student's assessment results. Each activity represents a specific skill that has been indicated by the assessment as needing to be taught. Activities are categorized by curriculum and then by lesson. There are 3 main types of skills: building blocks, fundamental, and expansion skills. Fundamental skills are necessary for successful everyday functioning. Building blocks are prerequisites to a fundamental skill. Expansion skills are non-essential skills, but may provide further enrichment in certain areas. After reviewing the activities available to you, you can quickly add your chosen activities to the treatment plan by simply checking the box and clicking the button. Step 3. Start treatment. Once you have selected and added the activities you want, you are ready to begin teaching. Skills provides you with all the tools necessary to design and manage an effective curriculum plan, such as printable activity guides that are customizable by the teacher, supplemental teaching aids including printable data sheets, teaching guides, visual aids, worksheets, and tracking forms, detailed IEP goals and benchmarks for each activity, brief and visually appealing video tutorials, a variety of treatment progress and clinical timeline charts, and lots more. And since Skills is completely web-based, everything you need is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in one easy-to-access location. Skills users even benefit from unlimited access to a support community where they can ask questions and share ideas with a skills expert. Skills is always with you.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and our special guest right now is Evelyn Gould. I have to pause for just a second to say that somebody wrote in and said, "Dear Shannon, would you visit the Cayman Islands to speak at a conference once the dates are finalized for later this year?" I don't even know how to answer that, but everybody in the studio around me is like, yes, yes. Emily said she'll come. So let us know more information. I'm not opposed to that. I don't even know where the Cayman Islands are, and but clearly I love to speak, so I'm not afraid to open my mouth and speak. So let us know, and it's in the Caribbean, Emily tells me. Emily knows these things. I am geographically challenged. It's a problem that I have. I'm working right now with Jem on the states and the capitals, and I think that's where I left off in geography when I was in school. So thank you. I'm certainly interested. Let's definitely talk about it. But you said Cayman Islands, yay.
I did.
Evelyn thought that was a great idea. So in any case, as I just messed up my mic, Evelyn Gould is joining us right now, and we haven't had the opportunity to be with you for a couple of weeks because I was away, you were away, and I'm thrilled to have you back. Welcome back. It is always so wonderful to have you in here. I was saying earlier, I was saying nice things about you behind your back. I always like to tell people when I say nice things behind their back. But I was saying how you always give us and me permission to have my feelings, to be where I'm at, and that's such a wonderful thing. So thank you always for being you and for being here. Now I'm getting all mushy. It's that kind of a day. But I asked you to come in today to talk about bullying because this is something that you've been talking about for a little while now, and I think it's a subject that we can't talk enough about. So I'm ready. Enlighten me. What shall we talk about today? Because there's many things to talk about with bullying.
Yeah, I mean, what do you want to know?
Well, I want to know how we can help our kids, because clearly the studies, I think you said to us before, show that our children are more likely to be bullied than not.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, there isn't very much research out there, to be honest, especially with regards to bullying, well, basically with regards to bullying and special needs in general, but specifically autism. But there's been a couple of recent studies. One was published, I think, in 2010, and by Twyman and colleagues, and they were looking at children aged 8 to, let me get this right, 15, I'm thinking, I can't remember exactly, with ASD, and they find that they were 2 or 3 more times probably more likely to be bullied.
Yeah, which is shocking to me in a way. When I look at it completely unemotionally, I go, okay, I guess I can see that. But on a mom level, I hear that. I hear 8, and I've shared on the show that we had a little bit of experience with bullying for the first time this year. My son was 8, and I was unprepared. I really thought that was more of a high school thing. What rock was I living under? Because clearly, it makes sense to me, but on an emotional level, I wasn't ready for it.
Yeah, and the other report that came out that we talked about on the show before was by the AIN community, and that's the Kennedy Krieger Research Institute or so on. And they just released some preliminary information, basically, to kind of, with respect to all the parents who participated in their survey, and they find a very similar result. It seemed to suggest that maybe kids with ASD were about
2/3 more likely to be bullied than even their typical peers or whatever, their siblings.
Yeah, I want to pause for just a second. For those of you who aren't familiar with the EAN project, as Evelyn was saying, it's the Kennedy Krieger Institute that does that, and you can all register. It's for free. You can register both yourself and anybody else who is involved with your child, and can register your child, and they will send you questionnaires from time to time asking you questions, and then they'll send you the research to let you know. It's a really important project because the more of us who participate, the more information that there is.
Exactly. The more people that participate, the more information, the more generalizable the information that's provided, and the more it tells them about, or they get a better picture of what everyone's going through, not just the specific people that are already involved in the project.
And I remember the first time that when they started it and we participated and we got the first big study that came back, and I remember looking at it, and a lot of it for me was that duh moment that I talk about from time to time, where I looked at them, I was like, well, duh, you know, that they said that parents experience a high level of stress when they have a child. Well, duh. But you know, studies like that, as much as I can duh them, they're really important because it lets the world know, and also gives us permission, like you do, to say, okay, it's not just me.
Exactly. I think it's very important because a lot of this probably isn't surprising, or a lot of this information isn't surprising to the people who are experiencing it.
Yeah.
But in terms of being heard and having people take notice and put in place policies or strategies, or be like, you know, well, this is a real problem, we have to do something about it, you really need to be putting the research out there, because it's basically evidence to say this is a real problem.
Yeah.
And you know, you kind of have a bigger voice then to get your needs met, or to get your kids' needs met.
And I'll tell you, one of the things that came out of that study that was not a duh for me, that I thought a lot of people heard, they didn't hear loud enough, but the parents reported that the stress that they had, while you would think that the stress about how their child was doing, or the stress about the finances, both of those things registered high, but the highest stress overall that all parents reported was the stress in getting services.
Yeah.
And that for me, because I literally thought that was just me. And to find out that it was everyone resoundingly said that the fight with schools, that the fight with agencies, with the fight with insurance, that was the biggest stress.
And interestingly, I know of research that's been done in the UK, because this is research done in America, but I'm not obviously from America. But I know that the research done in the UK has shown that or suggested that a big bulk of stress for parents there is the same thing. It's like getting services and fighting to get the services that they need and that they want for their child.
Yeah. And I think that was eye-opening for us as parents, that we realized, okay, that we're all feeling this. It's a real thing. And I think for some organizations, it was certainly an eye-opener of, okay, we need to address this. This is a stressful part of this, and it does not need to be. So very interesting, so very useful. So EAN Project, you can Google it and participate in that. All right, we've digressed. But worthwhile digressions.
So we were just talking about why it's important, I guess, to talk about bullying, and one of them is that it seems that children with ASD are more vulnerable to bullying.
Yeah.
And in that, and that's very important to know about, because obviously bullying can have significant effects in short-term and long-term on children's well-being in general, and that goes for the bullies and the children being bullied. And one of those is this idea of FAPE, or vape, whatever you want to call it.
Oh, yes, vape, yes.
Yeah,
I was like, FAPE? Is that a drink? FAPE?
Vape. So the free appropriate public education, and not every child has a right to a free appropriate public education.
Exactly.
And of course, if you have a child who's being bullied, it's quite likely that that's going to interfere with their ability to access their education and to learn. I mean, it can have, obviously, if it's very aggressive physically, it could have physical consequences, but we're more concerned about what it does psychologically in the long term. And how that can create a whole bunch of problems for the child, or even the bully, in terms of going to school, remaining in school, interacting with peers, and so on. So that's very, very important. If your child's not accessing the education, then they need to be.
I think that's a really important point, Evelyn, that I hadn't been aware of, because if you have been on this journey for any period of time, that you're going to regular IEPs, and the FAPE word is the be-all, end-all, that free appropriate public education, because the school has a legal obligation to meet it. And if they are in violation, it's really difficult for them. And when bullying happens, the argument can be made, there is precedent that it is violating FAPE. So it is a place to stand on.
Exactly, because if your child's not accessing their education and the school is not taking significant steps, or it fails to take steps to end that bullying problem and to help your child access their education, then they're in violation.
Right, and there's a whole host of things that go along with that. You definitely want to consult with some legal people about what. But I'll tell you, just saying to somebody when you're talking to them about bullying at school and saying, we're in violation of FAPE here, lights a fire.
Yes, and the other thing that lights a fire is the possibility that the bullying, if you show that it's in relation to the child's disability, that's disability harassment.
Yes.
And that's actually illegal under, I think, the American for Disabilities Act, and the other one is the 504 something or other that I can't remember the name of now, but there's there's two acts there. So if your school doesn't do anything about it, or doesn't take appropriate steps to end the bullying and work with you, then they could be in violation of state law and federal law and so on.
It gets really serious.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to know, because sometimes if your child is being bullied, not only does it feel like your child is being victimized, but as a parent, you go to the school, and if you feel like things aren't happening and that nothing's being done, you begin to feel like a victim too. And it's important to know where you're empowered.
Yeah.
And these laws are in place, and it's important language to use. Disability harassment and violation of FAPE, boy, things start moving if you start saying those words.
Yeah. And you can also, actually, I'm just thinking, it's important to say that we support teachers as well, because it's not always parents against teachers. Teachers have a hard time, because bullying mostly, or a great deal of bullying, happens whenever teachers are not around, and it can be very difficult for them to pinpoint bullying or even know that it's going on.
Yes.
But you may also have a teacher who does know what's going on but is not getting anywhere. You might, if you are a teacher and you know about bullying and you feel like no one's listening to you, and you're feeling kind of paralyzed, or you're getting the blame for something, and then it's really important that you start throwing those kind of terms around and making it, and emphasizing to whoever is your supervisor or in charge of the anti-bullying policies and so on at your school, that you emphasize to them how serious it is, and you try and do what you can there and work with the parents, because you are the one that's going to be liable. The school's going to be liable at the end of the day.
Thank you for bringing that up, Evelyn, because I don't think, I say all the time I'm a former teacher, and that I think that the vast majority of teachers are really remarkable angels on this earth. The things that they do and the passion that they feel for teaching our kids. There are exceptions, right? We all know that there are exceptions, but the vast majority are people who really
I can't say that I've come across many teachers who want to turn a blind eye to bullying.
Yeah.
And they want the best for the kids in their class.
Absolutely.
So most teachers are definitely going to want to work with you on that.
Yes.
And if they aren't doing anything, it's probably because they don't realize that it's going on, or they're having difficulty with proving that it's going on, because it's happening when they're not around, or for whatever reason, or perhaps they're getting some resistance from other people in the school, and so on. I mean, every school should have an anti-bullying policy, so that's definitely something to look at right away. And if your school doesn't have an anti-bullying policy, then they need to get one, and that goes for teachers or parents. If you're a teacher and you know your school doesn't have a policy, make them adopt guidelines.
Absolutely.
And if you're a parent, the same thing.
Absolutely. Very important. And that's something that you can do on your own, or do through the PTA, or, you can just say, I need to have a meeting with the principal and say, this is what's important.
Absolutely.
There are different things online. I know we had Maria Dismonde, who's an author of The Juice Box Bully, on this show a couple of months ago. She, in her book, The Juice Box Bully, there is a pledge at the back of the book that could easily be taken out. It's online. If you have nothing else, you can do that.
Absolutely. There's plenty of kind of templates and things and ideas online that can help you, or as a teacher or as a parent, to come up with some kind of policy and policy guidelines.
Okay, great information. Let's take a little bit of a break, and then when we come back, I'm going to ask you to talk about, as parents and as teachers, what we can do to empower the child who's being bullied. But then I want to talk about what we do to empower the group around them as well, because I know that that's a really important thing. So stick with us. Back with more with Evelyn Gould talking about bullying in just a few minutes.
ACT Today, or Autism Care and Treatment Today, was founded in 2004 by several passionate parents who believe that access to early, effective treatment is vital for individuals with autism. Together with Dr. Doreen Graham-Pache, the world's leading provider of therapy for autism, this group created ACT Today to do just as the name implies, take action immediately to treat autism spectrum disorders.
A lot of families and parents and even physicians don't yet accept the fact that we are recovering children with autism.
In 2006, inspired by her struggle to get treatment for her young son Wyatt, television producer and author Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson and her husband Reed hosted a backyard benefit for the foundation called Denim and Diamonds for Autism. Tens of thousands of dollars were raised, and in 2008, Alspaugh-Jackson took the helm of ACT Today as executive director.
This country has to come together to save a generation of children.
With a dedicated board of directors, a small but committed staff called the A-Team as in autism, ACT Today is making a huge difference in the lives of children across the country. Grants that fund programs for behavior therapy, special needs schools and summer camps, medical needs like diagnostic tests and special diets, basic safety equipment such as helmets for children who repetitively bang their heads, and fencing for those who wander, assisted technologies and assistance dogs.
Hi, my name is Max, and I love my iPad too. It's so great. I can take photos.
In 2010, ACT for Military Families became the first national campaign to benefit military children with autism.
I'm Joe Montaigne. As a father of a daughter with autism, I know the challenges that brings.
ACT Today continues to educate and raise national awareness on the need for early and intensive intervention for an epidemic that affects at least 1 in 110 children.
I called on November 1st. And I'm like, how am I going to get notified? How are you going to let me know? And they ended up looking and they informed me that he had received a grant, which was like a blessing from above.
ACT Today, fulfilling its mission of helping families with autism, one child at a time.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. I'm here with Evelyn Gould. She's a BCBA, a board-certified behavior analyst, and we're talking about bullying. We just talked about all the reasons why it's important to talk about bullying and some of the different things that can be empowering for parents and for teachers if bullying is happening. And we know that it's more likely to happen with our kids on the autism spectrum. But I want to know, Evelyn, what are some things that we can do to empower our children so that we can make bullying less likely to happen, but also when it does happen, what can we do to empower them so that they know how to deal with it?
Well, one thing I wanted to just mention that I was thinking about in the break for parents is to remember that not to worry about being wrong.
Okay.
So not to worry about, you know, if you don't have to know your child's being bullied for sure to talk to your school about it, and I think that's really important. It's better to assume that it could happen or it is happening, and that's okay. If it's not happening, it's still good because you put in place prevention strategies, if that makes sense, because part of the problem with our kids with autism, as you'll know, is that maybe our kids can't tell us, and it may not be obvious that something's happening to them at school. Like they may not have the communicative abilities to tell us, but they may also not realize that they're being bullied. I've seen that quite a bit actually, and the kids just don't know, and just because they don't know doesn't mean that it won't necessarily have an effect on them. Either it could still be interfering with their learning, or or their ability to fit in at school, but also maybe later on they could look back at that if they do develop the ability to kind of take the perspective of other people, and they may look back on those experiences, and then it has an effect on them.
Yeah.
So it's really important. And then sometimes our kids don't know they're being bullies as well.
Yeah.
Like maybe they're misinterpreting someone's intentions and reacting, or for whatever reason, they just don't have the skills to interact in a more friendly way with their peers, and they just don't realize that it's not okay.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if they've been in an environment in which they've been bullied and didn't know the terms for it, but saw that other people were reinforced for it, there's every likelihood that they're going to start to react that way too.
There's lots of different reasons why it might happen. So it's just really important to kind of go in thinking it could, even if it's not, it could happen in the future, and I'm going to make sure that there's stuff in place, and I work with my skills so that it doesn't happen to my child. So just don't worry about being wrong.
Yeah, I so appreciate that, because, you know, I've talked a little bit about last year that my son first came to me and said that some stuff was happening, and you know, I, in the moment, said to him, well, you know, don't listen to them, and kind of a little bit poo-pooed it, and I'm a little ashamed of that, I have to be honest. And then of course it escalated, and I still, after it escalated, felt funny about going, and I have a great relationship with my principal, and I have a great relationship with my son's teacher at the time, and I still felt funny because I didn't want to be, you know what I mean? Yeah. And but I did, you know, I felt funny about it, but I said, hey, look, we can't let this go. But I felt a little funny about it. So thank you for saying, you know, it's okay.
I mean, you just got to remember that the worst that's happening here is that you're standing up for your child, and you're advocating for your child's safety and for their ability to access an education. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Absolutely no one can tell you that that's not okay.
Yeah. But I do think that there is a thing amongst parents, we overcome it all the time, where we feel like, oh, you know, I got to pick my battles. I got to, you know, I don't, because if I fight about this, then, you know, because I got to be with them at the IEP thing, is it going to mean I don't get this, you know? You go through all of those different things, but at the end of the day, our kids are what's most important.
Exactly, and it's also about how you fight the battle. You don't need to go into your school assuming that they're not doing anything and they're terrible and they don't have a policy and there's bullying going on and no one cares. Like, you don't have to go in thinking that. You can go in and just ask some questions.
Yes.
And no one's going to be angry with you about that, and if they are, then that's an alarm bell.
Yes.
Because schools should be open and welcoming of questions like, oh, I'm just interested in what your anti-bullying policy is, and how have you dealt with bullying in the past, and those kind of questions are fine. Or, you know, I'm slightly worried about my child maybe being vulnerable. What can you tell me about how you deal with it, or what, is there things that we can do, or you know, just asking some probing questions, and you'll get a sense of, probably as a parent's instinct, you'll probably get a sense of whether you feel more comforted by what they say or not, or you need to talk to them more in detail. And then you can lead into sort of, well, I would like to put some strategies in my IEP or so on. And really no one can argue with any of those, that, you know, that's not being oppositional or difficult, that's just talking about it.
That's a wonderful thing to remind us all, Evelyn, because you know, I know for a lot of you, it feels like when you go to the IEP meeting, it doesn't matter what you say, it can feel, it isn't always, but it feels oppositional. It feels like you're fighting for your life and your child's life, is what it feels like, and somebody's got you by the throat. And you're afraid you're going to say or do the wrong thing, and it's going to cost your child something. It's a lot of responsibility. So thank you for reminding that it's just a conversation, and that you're not being oppositional when you're asking for what is appropriate. And it is clearly appropriate. Any school that is not arguing that they should not be arguing with you that they absolutely all should have a bullying policy. And anybody who doesn't and is arguing about it, big warning signs.
And if they're completely denying that there's any bullying or that ever any bullying, that's an alarm bell to me too, because we know that the incident, like, there's a high incidence of bullying, and just in general in the population. We don't really know exactly what it is, because there's lots of different reports and there's lots of reasons for that. I mean, one of the reasons is that perhaps the teachers just don't know what's going on, because it's happening not when they're around, or maybe, you know, and it's also very subjective. Like, one teacher might interpret something as being, oh, that's just kids, but they don't look at the effect that it's having on the children, perhaps, or not considering that one child really takes stuff to heart more than another child, or interprets it differently from another child, and it's more about the effects rather than what it looks like, and that's what's really important.
Absolutely. I think that's a really important point. That I have in the past had people say to me, when I say, my son is concerned about this, and they go, well, but but that's not reality. And my thing is saying, but it is to him. He feels like that's happening, and that's what we have to deal with. Whether it's actually what's happening, it feels like it to him, so we need to deal with that. And it seems crystal clear to me, but for some people, they're like, well, but that's not happening.
I mean, I think it's definitely easier for us to see it that way, because once you get into the behaviour analysis world, then it's everything we do is about function and why something's happening and what effects it's having, rather than what it looks like. So it is easier for us to look at bullying and not really care about what it looks like, but care about, we would define it as bullying based on what the effects are, rather than what the behavior looks like.
Exactly, which is a really interesting distinction. So what do we do for our kids at home and in the classroom to help them to be less likely to be bullied? Let's start with that.
Okay, well, first of all, you need to do all the things that we just said. So talking to your school, make sure your BCBA, if you have a BCBA working with you in your home or with your child in the school, whatever, make sure that they know that you're concerned about bullying. And so, because if they don't know, then they won't necessarily incorporate teaching or lessons or whatever behaviour management strategies that are specifically hopefully going to help with preventing your child or making your child less vulnerable. So it's really important to make sure everybody's on board and everyone knows that it's a concern and that it's a priority for you.
Give me an example of what one of those strategies might be, because it's different for every child, right?
Yeah, well, it's different for every child, but for example, at the really basic level, we know that kids who can make friends or have good friendships or peers around them are much less vulnerable to bullying. So we're going to look at specific deficits that your child has in the area of maintaining friendships, or what can we do to so that they have friends around them or kind of peers to kind of collaborate with. So we're going to look at social skills in terms of conversation, perhaps, or attention, how can the child initiate attention, or how can we get them so that they can play alongside other peers, or can we teach them interest, to have shared interests with their peers. That's a big one. What are their peers interested in? How can we get our kid to be able to know what to talk to them about, or what not to talk to them about, or how to know when to stop talking about something. Rather than continue going on and on and on about something that's really interesting to them but their peers don't care about. Or how can we enable them to be able to join in with certain things, all those types of things.
And likewise, being able, if the other child is stuck on a topic that they're not interested in, how to be a part of that conversation and steer the topic to something else.
Exactly. So all these kind of things. Maybe we know that kids can be more vulnerable if they're engaging in certain non-typical behaviours that make them stand out. So anything that attracts a lot of attention from peers can make a child vulnerable to bullying, like stereotypy, for example, so repetitive kind of behaviours, or even just meltdowns, challenging behaviours. If you have a child who's very rigid or inflexible about change in general, or things have to be done a very specific way, it becomes very easy for peers to kind of push buttons and cause the child to have a meltdown. Or just, if the child's having a meltdown over something that the peers just can't make sense of or think is silly, then they're going to attract negative attention. Or perhaps you get a child who has something odd about the way that they talk. For example, they have strange prosody going on. So they're not, by prosody I mean not using the appropriate kind of emotion in your voice, or inflection, or volume, pitch, kind of that kind of thing. So they just sound a bit strange. I've definitely worked with a child who was picked on because he sounded a little bit strange. He kind of had a little strange sing-songy thing going on. And other children I've worked with have had odd accents, which are not related to their family at all. It's maybe they've got something from TV, or they're imitating something and they just sound a bit strange, and the peers just pick on them for that reason. So those are all types of things that your BCBA would work work with you to identify, well, what are things that the child is doing that could potentially attract attention, unwanted attention from peers, and how can we help them work on those things?
Yeah. I think really important. That's hard for me. It's emotional for me because I think really, you know, we're then teaching our kids to fit in, and I wish the bullies would just stop. But it is important that we make our kids aware of themselves and what they're doing and the reactions that come with it. I think that that's really important.
I mean, obviously, we need to educate the parent, the child, or the children in the school, and the teachers and everyone else, and it's very important to educate everybody so that we try and foster a more accepting environment and a more supportive environment. I mean, also like things like buddy programs and peer advocacy programs work. From the research, and it seems like they work extremely well in preventing bullying, and just generally teaching the other kids to support each other. But the reality is that that is not enough. You know, we do need to help our kids fit in, and that's just the world. Unfortunately, that is the real world.
And there are some benefits to it. I mean, the whole idea of working on having your child be able to gain friendship and maintain a friendship and keep a friendship, I think that's something we all want.
Absolutely.
I don't think anybody would be opposed to that, and that helps to make your child more Teflon, for lack of a better term, when it comes to bullying. So
I think it's very important to just emphasize that the whole point of what, I mean, for me as a behaviour analyst, I want to give my children choices. And in order to give them life choices, I need to give them all the tools that so they can then use those tools to function in the world. And if I don't give them those tools, then their choices are limited in terms of how they work, kind of interact with their world.
Very well said. Okay, you touched a little bit about the group, though, that surrounds kids. And there is some evidence that when we, like you were saying, the buddying, that when we educate those other kids and ask for them to band together, that has effect on decreasing bullying.
Yeah, it's really important that everyone takes responsibility for bullying. So, and that means that you're not just focusing in on the child who's being bullied and just fixing the child being bullied, because that's not really going to address bullying. Is more like a global problem, and there's nothing to say that your child, someone else might not come along and bully your child for something else that you didn't deal with, or that the bully will then bully another child in the classroom, and we don't really want that either. You know, it's really a global problem, so everyone needs to be involved, and so we want to change. We want to help the child who's being bullied. We also want to teach skills in the same way that we're teaching the child who's being bullied new skills and decreasing problem behaviours. We want to do the same for the bully. Exactly the same thing. The bully has deficits too, and that's why they're there. And they're struggling with a lot of things too, and that's why they're behaving in that way. So we need to help them too modify their behaviour, and then kind of change the entire environment around that. So like what you're saying, that's the kids in the classroom, the peers. It's also about educating and maybe changing teacher behaviour and school policies at the top level and so on. So I don't know, we didn't really say what buddy programs and advocacy programs are.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that.
Maybe someone doesn't know what they are. But the buddy program is just usually where you get the older children kind of palling up with a younger child and being like kind of like a mentor idea, and that can really work well in terms of preventing bullying. It's everyone, kind of the older kids are taking responsibility for the younger kids getting on well and kind of protecting them a little bit. And then the advocacy program is basically where all the children in the class stand up for each other against bullying. And I think there's some research out there to show that a lot of the bullying incidences will stop when a peer, or the majority will stop when a peer kind of steps in and stands up for another peer. And I think, Shannon, you told me a story about your kid recently. Palling up, this idea of a peer in the class, like kind of palling up with your son to come up with some kind of peer strategy. They actually came up with their own peer strategy.
It did. Well, I was running around and asking everybody here and getting everybody's advice and trying to figure out what I was going to do and how what was I going to do to help the school to get bullying under control, and trying all these different things with my child, all of which I'm sure were helpful and useful. And my son, who was having an issue with somebody at school, and he's in the choir, and somebody said something to him, and it culminated, there were all these different things, culminated with him crying. because the person had said something to him. And this is after we'd all talked about everything, and it's still happening. And we're trying all these different things. It's still happening. The child says something to him. He bursts into tears. An older child in the choir went to him, put her arm around him, and said, "You know what? That boy talks to all of us that way. We're not putting up with it. He's done that to me before. Don't you cry. It's okay. I'm going to stand here with you." She took the initiative. My son was in 3rd grade at the time. I believe she was in 4th grade at the time. So they were in choir together. And the other little boy, it was very interesting because, you know, it's all too easy for me in the past when it did involve my child to vilify the bully and go, "The bully is..." And yet I knew this child, and he's sweet. His parents are sweet. He's got some, you know, some behavior things going on. I don't think he realized the effect that he was having until the other girl came and said, "You're not doing this anymore, and I'm standing with him, and enough of this." And then he was very apologetic and has been so sweet to my son ever since. But then, you know, and I was saying, okay, well, this is better. Things are going to get better. But then this girl and my son, the last 3 days of school, got together, and this is what they came up with. My son had a book of Star Wars stickers at school with him, and he decided that they were going to ask people to be part of a anti-bully club, him and this girl. And she was keeping a chart, and anybody who signed up got a free Star Wars sticker from my son's book. And he would go out on the playground, and they set up a table, and they were calling kids over saying, "Do you want a free sticker? Well, you have to sign up to be a part of this club that says you won't bully, and you won't participate in it, and you won't allow it to happen while you're standing there, watch it." And they came up with this completely on their own, did not tell me until they were already doing it, and did like the trial run the last 3 days of school. He's already so excited and amassing stickers for when he goes back to school. I was very proud of him, very proud of this other little girl who said, "No, I'm not going to stand here." And you know what? It was so humbling to me because all these things that all the machinations of what I had planned, you know, building the Taj Mahal of anti-bullying for the school, and it took one little girl to stand up and say to my son, and what she said to him was so much more powerful than everything that I had said. I had said to him, "You know what, he's got his own issues, don't take it personally," and this little girl said, "No, he's made me feel that way before too, and we're not doing it anymore." And that's what he listened to, the power of another child. Holy
Absolutely,
moly.
and I think that's the key. That's why these advocacy programs work really well, because it's the peers supporting the peers.
Yeah.
And then, of course, remembering things like not only the power of the peer influence, but that the peers are there all the time when teachers are not. So children are everywhere all the time whenever the adults can't be. So that's really why it's really powerful as well.
Yeah, and especially I think when they get to 8, I'm learning this, that the kids, I mean, I'm definitely seeing this with my son, but I definitely see it with the other kids too, that we're now the adults, and on some front, they just automatically dismiss that we don't understand. That it's not like when we were in school. It's different now. You didn't have the internet when you were in school, you old lady, you know. And so they just kind of dismiss us as the establishment, and they listen to each other in a way that they don't listen to us. It's very humbling.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why I think it's really important when you're working with a child that you are thinking about that constantly, that you're thinking about, well, what do the peers care about, not what I care about necessarily. Like, I'm not going to teach all the play skills that I think the child should be playing, or like all the games that I want my child to play, because I'm going to obviously pick like really educational ones that I want my child to do, or like really like, you know, intellectual, whatever, or it looks really good and pretty, and they have like little wooden toys and this kind of thing. Like, I need to be thinking, what do the peers really care about here? And yes, teach those wonderful other things, but make sure that your child knows how to play video games, for example, knows how to like play chess or be flexible about playing games, because kids, that's the other thing, is like it's important that we play with kids in a way that their peers are going to play with, and teach them how to deal with the fact that kids are always changing the rules, and they're always flitting from one thing to another thing. They don't necessarily play the game the whole way through. Sometimes they'll play something for 5 minutes and then they want to play something else, and we want to teach them how to talk about things that their peers are interested in as well, and just have knowledge about it, and that's going to help them develop friendships and fit in as well.
Really important things to know. Now, I know you did a webinar recently on bullying. Is that something, if people want to have more information, that they can have access to? Is that?
Sure. I think it is on the web. I don't know what
we'll find out about that.
But yeah, I think the webinar is definitely on or there's a link to it anyway, I think, somewhere. So Emily could get that from Sarah Sharaf, who works with Adele.
Okay.
Emily. And then I think if
we can get access to it.
You can.
In any case, we'll get access to it, and we'll post that on our Facebook page.
It basically has, I think, information on there.
And really important about a whole bunch of different things, because there's no way we can talk about all the different things in 40 minutes here. But there are lots of things that we can do to empower our kids, to empower our classrooms, to empower our teachers, to empower ourselves as parents. But I just want to go back over one of the things that you said in the beginning, because I think it's so important that what you said, first of all, about parents not thinking that they're wrong and asking for help and support at the school, I think that cannot be said enough. That it's okay for us to be squeaky wheels when it comes to this.
Yeah.
And I know that
teachers too, like, you know, if you're a teacher, it's okay don't be afraid of being wrong. You want to make sure that it's about prevention here.
Yeah.
So just reminding yourself that you're trying to prevent these children from suffering, or prevent kids from not being able to access an education and so on. And it's a lot harder to undo something than it is to prevent it, really. It can be a lot more effort initially to set up a lot of preventative strategies, but in the long run, it's much better, obviously.
Yeah, and something that you had touched on before is that even if you see the child being bullied, even if the child seems to be oblivious to it, that it's not okay to let it to continue to happen. If the child does not seem to be aware that they're being picked on, you said this to me recently and said, but there is that possibility that down the road, when they understand things, that they're going to go back and remember that and be traumatized by something that happened before.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important to bear that in mind. That just because it may not seem like it's important right now, or that the child's affected right now, there's always a possibility that later on it might affect them. And of course, we don't want other kids to see that as being okay. That's the other thing, or other kids to think that your kid doesn't care, or it doesn't matter. And for the bully too, we don't want the bully to continue thinking that that doesn't mean anything, that behavior.
Yeah, I can remember very early on, probably the first time that my son was ever teased, and it wasn't bullying, but he was being teased, and it was on a playground before he started school, and he was completely oblivious, had no functional communication skills at that point. And I remember having that moment where I thought to myself, well, at least he doesn't understand. At least his feelings aren't hurt by it. I guess that's a mixed blessing in this, a hand that we've been dealt. And I remember the first time that he realized he was being teased, and having the realization of, okay, he gets it now. And it never occurred to me that we never want to be in a position where we're saying to ourselves, oh, well, at least he doesn't get it right now. That we really have to be mindful of the fact that there's the possibility that on some level that they're mindful of it, or later on they're going to realize, and that it will be just as traumatic. Really important.
And remembering that the bullying can have an effect just because your child isn't able to verbalize or vocalize that, oh, that's affecting me. It can still have negative effects on their behavior, because you don't just, somebody doesn't do something to you and then it doesn't have any effect. It's likely that it will have some kind of negative effect.
Yeah, even though sometimes our kids, especially when their receptive language skills aren't great, or they don't seem to react to things, we can't assume that it's not registering in some way. We always want to be very mindful of the fact that they have the same rights and feelings as anyone else.
And like you pointed out earlier, that kids observe, and if a kid, say someone's being aggressive to your child, and they may not understand that that's bullying or have an emotional response to it, but it still may affect them how they then interact with other kids, and they may then start to be aggressive or imitate that behavior with other children. So you're really being mindful of that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We had a question that came in a little bit earlier, and it's one of those questions, it's just a few words, but it is this huge topic. And so I want to touch on it briefly, that somebody wrote in and said, how can I get my girls to talk? And I got to tell you, as a parent, like, you know, like stab me in the heart, because that one little phrase says so much. But here, I want to be 100% clear that there's so much there that it would take hours and a conversation and somebody needing to meet your children, but on a very basic level, keeping it as basic as possible. It's so important that your children get help that they need. We talk on the show all the time about functional communication skills.
Yeah, I think it's very important that you are somehow able to, or you're able to get access to somebody who understands functional language. I think that's the key, and that means that they understand how words are used and not just don't just have the goal of teaching words for words' sake.
Right.
Because if we look at how language develops when you get very young children, that they do start with just kind of babbling a lot of nonsense noise, but that then starts to be shaped into words. And the reason that happens is because we start to use them functionally to get things for ourselves. And if we just concentrate on trying to teach the form of the word, I hope this makes sense, but if we just concentrate on teaching the form of the word, and it's not useful, and we don't use reinforcement, and reinforcement is really the key, then it's going to be very hard for our kids, because they really do acquire the language when it becomes useful to them.
Right. And so important, and we say this all the time on the show, so important that you have access to a BCBA who has training with autism. Not all BCBAs have training with autism.
That's very true.
And that, you know, in the case of verbal, spoken language, I'm already confusing myself because verbal doesn't always mean spoken, but, you know, if you're trying to get to spoken language, you know, there are some cases where that is not going to happen because of other issues where you would want to consult with medical.
Right. But it's very important to emphasize that even if your child is not talking, like vocal speech, all children can communicate. And so communication is what is the key, and it's finding a way for your child to communicate that's appropriate.
Right. And in some cases along the path, children are taught functional communication as a gateway to that spoken.
Exactly.
Yeah. So important, ABA, a BCBA, perhaps a trip to a medical doctor, huge question. You know, and so I feel like we're giving you that, you know, this little tiny answer, but hear me when I hear Evelyn when she says that all children can learn to communicate. And that's where you got to put that's the basket you got to put your first eggs in, is how are you going to teach that to your child. And ABA.
It's almost teaching the value. It's, you know, once you're getting your kids teaching the kids the value of communication to get their needs met in whatever form that is, and really when you're looking for someone to help you, just make sure that they have experience in autism and that they have experience and understanding of language, of communication, and the function of language, and teaching functional communication.
Yeah, really super important, and we can talk more about that in the weeks to come about teaching functional communication skills. Maybe that's something we could have you help us out with. Okay, we're about out of time, so I want to tell you thank you so much for being here. I just so always appreciate all the information that you give us. It makes me a better parent, Evelyn, and it means a lot to me, so thank you so much for being here. Also, we're going to take a little bit of a break, and when we come back, we're going to be joined by Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy, and then we're going to be joined by Holly Robinson Peete. I do have a little bit of an update and reminder for all of you. We reported on this show about 2 weeks ago that there is a 25-year-old who's missing by the name of Ryan Putnam. He is somebody who experiences severe bouts of anxiety, was on a train, he's 25 years old, was on a train back to be reunited with his parents, and he got off the train at 3 a.m. in the morning in Salt Lake City, left his wallet and his computer on the train, was seen exiting the train at 3 a.m. in Salt Lake City with a young woman that he had never met before, and Ryan has not been seen or heard from his family since then. There are pictures on our Facebook of Ryan, and I want to remind everyone that if you have any information about Ryan or where he may be, he's believed to still be in the Salt Lake City area, to please contact the Salt Lake City Police. If you know anything at all about Ryan or his whereabouts or the young woman he seems to have exited the train with, any information is appreciated. We'll take a break and we'll be back with Let's Talk Autism after these messages.
My name is Vince Rebin, and I'm one of the regional directors for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I think there's multiple variables that a family wants to take into consideration when and if to make the decision to talk to their child about their diagnosis or to tell them that they have autism. The first main variable is, will their child comprehend the understanding of what autism is? And if they do feel that their child has a comprehension or will have the comprehension to understand what the diagnosis is and what that, then I think they need to be, the one thing that they want to be very careful of is making sure that it's a positive discussion. The discussion can't be what the child can't do, what they won't do, what they're not going to be able to do. It has to be about what makes them unique, what makes them an individual, what makes them different, but in a good way, what gives them strengths that other kids don't have. And I think it empowers them and it makes them feel that it's okay to be a little bit different. But then they talk about what the skills that they need to be successful in life. And that's when they start to delve into what types of skills are necessary, what kinds of skills that they need to learn so that they can be successful. Either it be language, it can be more adaptability to different situations, maybe it's more behavior modification, whatever it may be. Then they can talk about, well, this will get you successful because of this, or this will make you be able to learn better in this environment, or this will be able to get you more friends, those types of things. So I think that's very important. If they feel that the child won't comprehend or doesn't have the capability to comprehend what autism is, then they have to really touch with the rest of their family members and their social supports to be on the same page. You don't want to be trying to have a child understand what the diagnosis is if the child doesn't have the capability of doing that. I think siblings need to be interactive in the whole process from the beginning. One of the things that I do see that happens often is that the sibling, to some extent is removed from the situation. Not that there's any less love or any lack of interest, but they're removed from the situation because they don't want to bother them, they don't want to burden them, they just, it almost is a protective mode from them. Where really I see that in the end, that kind of isolates them and keeps them out of what really takes over the family's life. And I really believe that they need to be a process and they need to talk about it. They need to be able to ask questions. They need to be able to know why their child, why their brother or sister goes to a special school or has special therapists that come and work with them. Why do they eat different foods than I do? And I really think those questions need to be answered, as well as a early discussion, and then discussions get a little bit more sophisticated as they get older on why their brother or sister acts differently. What is the diagnosis? Why do they do this? How do they make it better? How do they help? They always want to feel helpful. They always want to be a part of the process of making it better. And it also relieves any burden that they might feel that did I do this, but am I making this any better, or am I making this worse? And I see a lot of siblings that get very conscious of that. So the earlier they are in the process and the more they follow through with, all the different interventions and understandings that they have, they'll get to know autism a lot more intimate than any professional or any person does that it doesn't live it day to day. Then they are able to understand it when they get into older formative ages, where they're not embarrassed by their sibling. They're not, they don't feel shame by their sibling. They know what the disability is, and they're the first one that's there to explain it to their friends, to explain it to anybody in public. They're the first one, they're kind of the first guard, I guess, or guardian for their brother or sister. So I think it's really important to start that very early and make them included in everything that goes on with the child, especially when it comes to their understanding of why their brother and sister are different.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Shannon Penrod.
And I'm Nancy Allspaw Jackson. It's good to be here with you.
I'm so thrilled to have you back. You've had a bit of a rough time.
Yeah, a little rough time. Lost my dad a week ago, and he was a great man, J. Frank Allspaw. Many accomplishments, but I think what he considered his greatest accomplishment, other than being a Marine hero, a college star at University of North Carolina, and an athlete, and working for the governor of Virginia for many years, was the fact that he was the father of a son with Down syndrome, and he proudly fathered David until David died at the age of 38 at home, living with my mother and father, and he told everyone that his greatest accomplishment was being David's father. So
amazing?
Kind of relates to all of us on this show.
Well, and also your father too, and you are an amazing accomplishment. I'm so thrilled to have you back. And I want to say, you've always been an inspiration to me, but you know, you step up on a regular basis for your child and all of our children, and I know you stepped up to be with your dad, which is not an easy thing. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for letting me acknowledge what a great man he was.
Indeed, absolutely.
He'll be with me every day.
And we've got a really incredible show that's planned here. We have a wonderful guest who we're going to be joined by in just a few minutes.
So excited to have her here.
Yes, Holly Robinson Peete is going to be with us here in the studio in just a few minutes. We want to remind all of you that there are lots of ways that you can interact with us. You guys have been writing in and tweeting, and we are taking notice, and hopefully going to have enough time to get to all these questions with Holly, but you can continue to interact. Want to go over what some of those different ways are. If you're watching us right now on autism-live.com, you will see it either says live or rebroadcast. If it says live, then the question box is active. You can type away your questions, hit enter, and they will appear magically here. There is a queue. There are many questions already in line, but you can participate and put your question in. Hopefully we'll get to all of them. If it says rebroadcast, or if you're watching us in any other way, or if you prefer to do it in a different way, there are many ways you can participate with us. The email address is up there on the screen for you right now. We have a phone line. We also are taking your messages on Facebook and on Twitter, and Emily is going to cycle through some of those different ways in which you can participate and ask Holly a question.
Yeah.
I'm so thrilled. I'm excited to be sitting next to the two of you, because the two of you are two of my best idols for people, awesome, fierce autism moms, the two of you.
Well, thank you, Shannon. You're one of mine.
Well, I don't know why, but
you are.
That's okay. But thrilled to have Holly here with us, and we're hoping that you guys will participate with us as well. We're going to go to break and bring Holly in. Can't wait. Stick with us.
Okay.
When do you know that your child isn't just a picky eater? When do we know it's time to ask for help?
Absolutely, that's such a great question. And I think the important thing is to think about it in terms of when is it impacting the child's health, their growth, or their development. So clearly, if your child is not growing along his or her own growth curve, so as you recall as a parent, you go to the pediatrician and I say that's the parent star chart. Yeah. They show you how your child is growing, and if your child is growing the way he or she is supposed to, you get the Gold Star Parent Award. But if your child has been growing along a certain percentile, let's say the 25th percentile, and then he or she starts to what we call fall off the growth curve, meaning he may go, for example, from the 25th percentile to the 10th percentile. That's really a time you need to start thinking about professional services. And the key there is when your child begins to fall off the growth curve, it may be that it's not that your child is losing weight. I think that's what's deceptive. Children should always gain weight. They should always grow as predicted. So your child, for example, may be simply maintaining his weight, but at a time when he should be gaining weight. So that will be the first, looking at the child's growth chart and talking to your pediatrician about whether your child's growing as he or she should be. The second issue is your child's nutritional content sufficient? And in this case, you really need to have your pediatrician either look at your child's diet, you might have to keep some records, or you may need to go to a nutritionist who will analyze your child's diet and tell you, well, your child's not getting enough iron, or they're not getting enough of certain minerals. Again, that would be a time when you would want to go and get professional help. And then last piece is if your child's intake is impacting his health in another way. So, for example, the child's cholesterol is elevated, or your child's having other kinds of problems that are a function of inadequate diet. Oftentimes, selective eaters are selecting diets that are high in fat or high in sugar. And it's interesting because it's not always the case that these children are underweight. As you indicated, they could, in fact, be overweight.
And it seems like when your child's diagnosed with autism, there's so many things to think about, and food is such an emotional issue to begin with. And so people say, well, you know, he or she's got all these other things, so then I just want to give him the foods, but we can get to a happy child with a healthy diet, yes?
Absolutely. You know, you're absolutely right. How do you pick and choose? What do I do next? We have so many issues. We have language, we have social skills, but you have to remember that your child's diet impacts his or her, not only their growth, but also their brain development. And so it really is important to intervene if your child is not eating an adequate diet, because malnutrition early on, and again, I'm not talking about kids who are, you know, marasmic, they have the big bellies with the skinny legs. I'm talking about kids, again, who are just, for example, eating French fries. If you're not getting adequate nutrition later on, your child may be at risk for later developmental learning or behavior problems. And you know, we have enough problems already. We don't want to add to them. Intervening early is, like everything, critical. You know, I know it's very, very difficult, but if you get good professional help, the great thing about these kids is the vast majority of them respond beautifully to treatment. Because they're often selective, they're actually getting hungry, they're motivated to eat, and all we need to do is expose them to new foods, and they'll actually then learn to like a lot of the foods we introduce. So if you get in there with a good professional help, intervene early, you can make a huge difference. I have tons of kids we've seen with autism who are actually the best eaters in their family. And what we like to say is the only way you can tell if a child's been to our program is our kids eat their vegetables.
That's wonderful. And so if somebody's determined that it's time to get help, let's start with how can they get help from your organization?
They can go on our website at the unmc.edu. And we have a page for pediatric feeding disorders, and we actually have an application for the screening process. They can go online and fill that out, and someone will contact them to schedule an appointment. We actually can do some evaluations by telehealth. So for parents who are at a long distance, we have been able to evaluate them without them having to come to our program. And we actually do deliver some services via telehealth. Now, if the problem is very, very severe, we may have to have the child come to us, at least for some period of time, to make a little bit of a difference in the behavior, and then follow the family via telehealth. So, you know, technology has been a big boon to us and to the families because it does sort of bridge that distance, because a lot of there's not a widespread availability of the kinds of programs that are really helpful for these children.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Shannon Penrod.
And I'm Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson. We're glad you're with us this morning.
Because we have a very special guest. We're all at Twitter here and very excited because Holly Robinson Peete is. We're Twitter-pated.
Here she is.
Because you're wonderful. And of course, everybody knows you. Anybody who is a card-carrying autism mom or dad knows who you are. But you are a very accomplished actress. You are a co-author of an award-winning book that has to do with autism. You are an extreme autism advocate, and we're so thrilled that you took the time to be with us.
And let's not forget the wife of a great American athlete,
yes,
and also an author and advocate for autism.
Yes.
And just an all-around crazy lady.
That's right. We'll add that in there too. Well, you have to be to get all that done, darling.
Well, thank you for having me, and I'm a big fan of what you both do. I follow you guys and all the work that you do on behalf of families affected by autism. Just, you know, this is my first time being in your building, in your space, and you doing so much over here. And I was just saying, I'm local, so you know, I just didn't know you guys were so close. So you may not get rid of me.
Well, I would love it. We'd like to come on. We Come
on in. Let's do it.
So we'd be thrilled to have you as whenever you want.
Well, thank you.
Well, as Shannon said, you have accomplished so much in entertainment. You know, so many of us, you know, I certainly remember 21 Jump Street.
Yes.
And
Now a lot of people do because of the feature
movie,
film.
right? And when you look at your career in TV and then the fact that you had a child with autism, you were a prominent national figure, you decided you would speak out about this, you would own it, you would be proud of it, you would be out there educating parents. A lot of people in your position, Holly, have not done so. A lot of people,
what? And what I will say to that is that it's not for everybody.
Right.
Not everybody has the big mouth I have. Not everybody has the desire for the platform to talk about it. And I've met a lot of those sort of celebrity or high-profile families, and they've said that to me. Thank you for doing this because we can't.
Well, that's
and
not
I understand that because it took us 5-6 years to talk about it.
Of course.
I mean,
but what made you decide to be an advocate and an activist and to go out there and help other parents?
If I'm being honest, we were kind of outed. I was doing the cover story of Essence magazine, and I hadn't talked about my son having autism yet publicly. And then the writer came over, and RJ started peppering her with these questions, you know, just sort of, and doing a lot of echolalia and stuff. And she sort of looked at him like what's going on with this kid?
Right.
And I was like, oh, well, you know, he has autism, so he sometimes will do this, that, and the other. And she was like, I didn't know he had autism. And I guess since we had spoken about it so much in our own space, I forgot that I hadn't really made some grand announcement publicly.
Okay.
So then she wrote about him having autism, and that became the whole scope of the story. And from that moment, he was maybe 8 or 9. From that moment on, it was like I was sort of drawn in. And then the response was so overwhelming that I said, okay. We had a kitchen table conversation, Dad and the kids, and we wrote out the pros and cons. Husband was worried that he might be, you know, labeled the athlete's son with autism. You know, he was worried about the labeling.
Right.
But I, you know, made a case and I won that fight, which I do, you know, at home all the time.
Right. You say it's my way or the highway.
Right.
Babe, right.
No, but he really understood. My husband did understand the importance of sharing the story and how many people are helped by it. And then in hindsight, you know, it was the best thing that we could have ever done.
Really, no regrets?
I really don't. Every now and then, you know, my son will say to me, you know, my daughter did, this is a perfect example, my daughter did, his twin sister did a commencement speech, and it was about her autism advocacy, and it was beautiful. But her brother redlined the whole thing. You can't say twin, you can't say that. So there's moments where I feel like, you know, he's a little bit on blast and he knows it. But then if you contrast that to when we're at an autism walk or where we're somewhere where he got an award at Carnegie Hall and he said these beautiful words, when you contrast, when, you know, he has sort of that reluctant guy where he's like, I don't want to, and then when he gets in that moment, he's like the Martin Luther King of autism all the time. You know, he's like, he embraces it, and he gets that his advocacy is having an impact.
Well, it empowered him.
It really has.
And he knows it's not a stigma, but that he can be an example for other kids. And I remember at the Autism Speaks walk, we interviewed you both, and he's such a handsome young man.
Yeah.
And he wants to be called Rodney now, not RJ Jr.?
He wants to be called Rodney, and he made that very clear when he was around 11 years old, that he just like didn't want to be RJ anymore, but we call him everything. He answers to a lot of things.
How many children do you have?
4 total.
4. And
5 including my husband.
Okay, and what ages are they? Because we don't want to forget about the other kids.
Yes, of course. My twins are Rodney and Ryan. My daughter, Ryan Elizabeth, they're 14.
Okay.
Then we have Robinson. He's 9. Gave him my maiden name. It's all very confusing at the airport.
Okay.
And Roman, the last guy, because if I didn't give him an R name, there would have been a book about me somewhere. Roman, who is 7. So 3 boys and a girl. Oh, there they are. Don't they look just so
what a gorgeous
Don't they look so angelic?
And the dogs. How did you get everybody?
Well, Harriet on the right. Harriet is Newfoundland. She was our service dog.
Oh. Oh,
she's an unbelievable autism service dog, and and then she's just the greatest family. She's the Peter Pan dog, basically.
That's so great. At Act Today, we give away service dogs.
Oh, it's like that's thank you for doing that. That is because they're not inexpensive.
No.
And
the families really have to be involved in the training. And
that's right. That's right. There's a lot of work that goes into that, but those dogs are amazing. Harriet is awesome, and you know, we're really blessed to have this nice village around our son.
Yes.
And so many families don't have that opportunity.
Right.
Which is why, you know, there's a lot of work to be done.
There is a lot of work to be done.
Absolutely.
And I want to get back to advocacy because, of course, there have been a couple of things that have happened in the news recently. I know. And I don't know if you had an opportunity because we loved what you had to say.
I saw what you said.
Well,
and I was like, I loved that.
Well, I loved what you said.
Well,
You were
tell
so
the world
eloquent.
what you're talking about.
Well,
we're right in here.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Tell everybody.
Okay, so we're talking, of course, about 50 Cent and the rapper and some comments that he made on his Twitter, and people were a little bit up in arms, but I love it when somebody can get right to the heart and be eloquent, and I also appreciate that you used your platform to say this is inappropriate, and you wrote on your Holly's Huddle, excuse me, I get all verklempt about it, but you wrote a beautiful, beautiful essay, an open letter to him, explaining why this was not appropriate and that we as autism parents were not going to stand for this.
Yes, I did. Now, there were a couple early drafts of that letter that probably weren't for prime time.
Okay.
But, you know, I had to get it out. And it was my husband, the cooler head, who said, listen, you need to reach out somehow to 50 Cent's record company, Interscope, and just call and say you're going to do this. Because we know Jimmy Iovine, we're friends. You know, we've known him for years, and so it's like, you know, let's at least, instead of ambushing someone.
Yes.
I really believe in the honey versus vinegar thing. I think it's important because you shut people off if you come too hard.
Yes, you do.
However, did reach out and didn't hear back. So, you know, look, busy people.
Yes.
Probably, who knows what happened, but the bottom line is, I never really was looking for an apology. A lot of people just thought that I should have asked for it. I initially just wanted him to take the tweets down because he said, you know, fool, you look autistic, and I thought that was just ridiculous.
Right.
I knew it was innocuous from his point of view. I knew it was.
Which is shocking.
Yeah.
It's shocking that that would seem innocuous to
I
somebody.
know. Well, you know what? It is shocking that it would seem innocuous,
the awareness.
But it is the combination of him not. If you don't know, you just don't know.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right. You're right.
I still have people in my family say the R word around me, and it makes me want to just, you know. And I say
Yeah.
and they're like ooh, and I've done it a million times, so they're just. Trained. So that was my goal, was to get him to take him down. When that happened, then the autism parents just took over. You know, hashtagging, you know, this is what does autism look like? This is what autism looks like. And I was fine with just how much awareness was out there as a result. I did not expect him to release an apology. I really didn't.
Really?
Well, you know, kudos to him for doing that. And one of the things that I thought was so smart that you did, Holly, was that you pointed out that you had respect for him as a businessman and an entertainer, and simply how really
and a philanthropist too.
And as a philanthropist, really how you would expect more from a man, to not realize that 1 in 88 kids out there, and that's the conservative as we know.
CD buying kids, by the way.
CD buying kids, and he's a businessman. You should be a little bit more aware of this audience, as should every politician in America. We have to come together as a force and as a power. And with public figures like you mentioning that and saying, this is your fan base. This is people that will buy your records, that will buy your drinks, that will buy, you know, that will vote for you in office. Thank you for pointing that out, because we've got to start admitting we are a powerhouse. We are an autism nation.
And I think we proved that by how the response. But like I said, when the apology came, I was thrilled because I thought it was pretty eloquent.
Yes.
And I thought it got to the heart of the matter. I think what I was concerned about, and I said it in the letter, of course, and you mentioned it too when you said that nice response, was the concept of us using autistic as the new retarded.
Yes.
Like, that ain't gonna happen on our watch.
Not on our watch, you're right. And that was a rally call.
7 million, whatever million, I think I spotted him 1 million followers. I said he had 8, but 7 million people.
Yeah.
You know, and then my son, you know, was really personally disappointed.
Because he's into rap music, he loves it.
And he goes to school.
Yeah.
And then if 50 Cent think it's okay to call somebody, hey, fool, you look autistic, then that doesn't bode well for the hallways at middle school.
As you said, it's not helping.
No, not at all.
helping.
So that actually was, it happened during 4th of July weekend.
Yes.
And so it didn't get a lot of pickup, pickup. It did in our community, but not as much, you know, public pickup. But thank God for social media.
Yeah.
It did. And then, you know, when it culminated in this apology, it really felt like we had done what we were supposed to do.
Well, this is why I say women should definitely rule the world, you know, be presidents, prime ministers, because there would be no wars. It would end up being apologies, and people would become more aware, and we'd all get along.
Well, and I appreciate that. And a good apology is a good apology. Of course, I said that, you know, it's important when you give an apology that you should put your money where your mouth is.
You did
say that.
And I did suggest, and I'll suggest it again,
I think we should go on record here.
That 50 Cent should put his money where his mouth is. And 50 Cent is his name, so 50 Cent for each and every one of his Twitter followers. I'm with you. I really think it was 8 million. So that's a nice, cool 4 million. I figure he's got that laying around in the couch cushions,
Let's have him give $1 million to Holly Rod, $1 million to Act Today.
That's what I suggested.
And you had 2 other foundations.
I suggested 3 other because I was rounding up to 5.
Oh, okay.
I did that as a one.
Okay.
Right?
Share the love. Share the love.
I thought Autism Speaks could use $1 million.
Oh, I don't know. They've got a lot of millions. But
Art of
Autism
could
Art
use,
of Autism. Some of the small
and
ones.
Areva Martin's Special Needs Network could use
we agree with that. Yes, we love Areva.
$1 million. So, you know, if he's listening, I think that that's an appropriate apology.
I agree. And
it's not
you would like to do that.
I'm right with you. I think that anytime someone gives, you know, puts their money where their mouth is, but I look at it like what it's worth in awareness, and I think it's worth that much and then some.
Yes,
So I feel like, you know, okay, you know, that this teaching moment that he really put the culmination on, he really helped it. Is worth millions.
I do agree with you.
I'm with
but
you,
I also
though.
like the written check.
Yeah.
Too.
I'm not mad at a written check now.
But
not mad at
all
that.
right, we should take a little break because there's more controversy that happened this week that we might want to talk about.
Yes,
next.
and I want to find out more specifically about Holly Rod and what you and Rodney are doing. And I want to talk about Rodney because he's such an important part of your advocacy, and he's doing some amazing work as a dad.
Absolutely. So stick with us. We're going to be back more with Holly Robinson Peete after these messages.
Well, I come out because I feel so connected with families. We're in this community, and this year feels different because we have this, you know, new prevalence of 1 in 88, and I just feel that energy of like, all right, it's time to get serious. And what I love is that not only do we have a great turnout of close to 30,000 people, but it's the people around the teams that are growing. The teams are getting bigger. So you got one kid with autism and a team of like 30 people that come, and that means the community is getting involved. Okay. And of course, I'm on the board, National Board of Autism Speaks, so I would be here regardless, but I get a lot out of it.
All right, now tell us about your foundation.
Well, Holly Rod is doing great. We partnered with Cal State Northridge, and we're going to open our first Autism Compassionate Care Center in Northridge, and we hope to be on all 23 campuses of the Cal State system soon. But the idea is, you know, and I was talking to families today, we're still having to drive from here to there to here to there. We need a one-stop shop, much like the St. Jude model in Memphis, where families can come, get treatment, not have to worry about paying for it. And they can feel good about themselves.
Rodney wrote a book. Can you just tell us a little bit about that? I think it's so important for the dads.
I love Rodney's book. It's called Not My Boy. It's a father's journey with autism, and I'm so proud of it because Rodney calls the dads the forgotten parent sometimes. So it's just really important to have his point of view from a macho ex-NFLer, talk about how he tweaked his expectations for his son. And I think it's been very helpful for dads.
I so enjoyed talking to you and your son that day. He is such a darling, handsome young man.
He was wearing me out that day, I'll tell you.
Well,
that's what they do. That's
Get
their
used
job.
to it, right? So we're back with Holly Robinson Peete and having a great discussion about her role as an advocate, activist, warrior mom, and you wanted to bring up another reason.
We talked about 50 Cent, but a lot of people were writing in yesterday and saying that they would like to get your take on what happened the other day with Joe Scarborough and his comments that he made about the shooting in Colorado, which just absolutely amazing to me. It took my breath away that kind of comment could be made in that kind of forum, but on top of it, that it's a parent is especially devastating to me.
Tell me, I might have missed this because I was on a plane last night on a red eye and gone. Can you let me know what you think about this?
Well, Joe Scarborough, who hosts the Morning Joe program on MSNBC,
who has a son,
on the spectrum.
Yes,
on the scale.
On the scale is what he said, exactly.
On the scale,
on the autism scale, said, when he heard about the shooting in Colorado, this tragic shooting, that he said he immediately understood what this was, that this was
that he'd seen it before.
That he'd seen it before, that it was a white young male from an affluent neighborhood, probably on the autism scale.
He profiled, basically. He profiled who Holmes was, the shooter, the alleged shooter. We have to say all that stuff.
Yes.
He profiled him and said, well, you see this happening a lot because, when these, and I'm juxtaposing, I'm not, what he said, paraphrasing, thank you. But the reality is that he was saying that he has a son on the spectrum, so he understands that, but his son has been loved and raised in a great, nice family, so he wouldn't be somebody that would
do something like this.
Carry out a heinous act of, premeditated murder. And I think what made me angry as an autism parent was that, okay, now we got one more thing to try to explain stigma-wise that is your son going, and let me tell you, already I've had people say to me, at summer school, are you nervous that this might happen to your son, that one day your son is going to flip the switch and shoot up a movie? I mean, so I thought Scarborough was so irresponsible with those comments. First of all, we don't have any.
It back.
He made some half-ass apology. I don't know what it was, but I think I want him to understand that there are so many families out there who have to deal with this stigma. Maybe his son has a nice little bubble that he lives in, but so many families, it's the last thing we need to deal with is one more stigma that our kids are somehow, because they're antisocial, going to become violent in this premeditated way. It was ridiculous.
And you know what, Holly and Shannon, I bet if you looked at the data, I bet if there was research done on this, the number of children on the autism spectrum who are mass murderers, I bet you would find there's nothing to support that.
There are just so many, and let's just say we get some report back that he was on the spectrum. So what?
Well, exactly.
So what?
Exactly.
And I mean, we have people who do this stuff who have all sort of schizophrenia, borderline personality disorders, all kinds of things. It just made no sense from a parent for him to say this. So I was appalled by it, and I think I tweeted something, and I was like, I don't have another open letter in me.
Right.
I was so defeated by the fact that it was a parent. He should have known
Well,
better.
I'd like to issue an invitation for him to be interviewed by us to talk about this, and perhaps we can enlighten others, and I think we should reach out to him and see if he'll come on the show.
Well, we absolutely will do that.
And isn't that really the issue, that if there is some ignorance, as you said, that it would be a parent that would, if we have to educate the parents, not to say things like this because of the impact, and you have that kind of platform.
Sure, it's just it just spreads hatred and prejudice.
It is, and I said, I'm worried for all of us that this kind of comment could be made, but I'm on a parent level, I'm worried for him and his child. If this is the knowledge the lack of knowledge that he's walking around with, that's not acceptable. He needs to get educated. And it's important on many
It's as outrageous as someone saying that just because a Muslim shot somebody, that all Muslims are, capable of terrorism. It's just outrageous.
It's just shocking in the ignorance. But,
so we'll
thank you for weighing in all these uncomfortable things.
I'm trying to have an opinion.
You have one, girl.
Like you
let me
don't
tell
really.
you.
My husband's like, oh, here she goes.
Yeah.
Should we call MSNBC first?
No, that's why we're called warrior moms. As you see by my tattoo, warrior mom.
Nice tat,
warrior mom.
I'm just sucking up the strength of the two of you, the warrior moms on either side of me.
Okay,
I thoroughly
let's
enjoy
switch over to warrior dads, because a couple of years ago, your husband and my husband were honored at Saks Fifth Avenue for being Fathers of the Year, along with a couple of other great dads like Gary Cole,
that was great.
Who's also the father of a daughter with autism, and an amazing man, Gary Cole. We love him as an actor and a dad. And Rodney got up and spoke, and it just touched me so much, his words, his honesty, the rawness, and he wrote a book about his journey with RJ. And can you tell us a little bit about that and how you think it's so different for the father versus the mother, and how he kind of evolved? It's a big question.
Newsflash, men process things differently than women.
Yes.
Shocking.
Not sure if you knew that.
Mars, Venus.
Right. And so it was hard for him to process the autism diagnosis. He took it very personally.
Yes.
He felt like he was just living this nightmare. This boy was supposed to be
the athlete.
Heisman Trophy winner.
Sure.
Named after him, the whole thing. And so it took him a while, and he went through the denial process, and it almost took us down. It really did. I mean, we had this sort of fairy tale marriage, Hollywood marriage, built to last and all that stuff, but it almost took us down because I would dog-ear books, and he was playing football at the time, and I was here in LA, and he was back east. I would painstakingly highlight stuff for him, just trying to break it down so it wasn't that complicated, what our son was going through, what was autism. And I would go to the football city where we were, and I would find the books unopened, nothing there. So I was just like, I don't think this is gonna work out. The good news was that eventually he had this epiphany where he realized he just didn't want to lose his family because he couldn't get his stuff together, because he couldn't tweak his expectations.
Right.
So I consider myself very fortunate there, because we have countless friends that we've met over the years who are no longer together.
Couldn't do it.
And I couldn't do it without this guy.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to say that. I was telling him, if you don't get together, I'm leaving you, but I was bluffing, and I'm glad he didn't call my bluff. Because I couldn't do it. And I see single moms, single dads doing
don't know
this.
how they do it.
And it blows my mind. I mean, just to raise typical kids, but, all the things that we have to do as moms for these children. So the good news is he's still around, 17 years, and
he really stepped up to the plate.
He did, and he wrote "Not My Boy" because he wanted to help other fathers have conversations about this, and it's been tremendously helpful. So I'm very proud of his
wonderful book.
advocacy.
My husband Reed, who was in the sports business as a sports executive at Fox, and he read the book, and he said Rodney really expressed everything he had.
Went there, didn't he?
Yeah.
He went there, and Reed, I mean, we had a moment too where we had come home from a car show where Reed just got freaked out because he was trying to show Wyatt the plane he flew, and he was in the Navy, and blah, 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 blah. And Wyatt wasn't interested. He abandoned us that day for like 3 hours. I couldn't find him. We got home, and I said, I am raising this child with you or without you. I want to raise him with you, but I'm raising him. So you let me know whether you want to be with us. And it just was almost this parallel experience, and that a man as respected as a jock, super jock, as Rodney is, could reach out to other fathers. I just want you to know that in my own family, and if you'll express this to him, it really changed Reed's whole perspective. So thank
that
him
is so
for that.
good to know. And I I love that, and he knows that. Rodney knows this impact, which is why when he wrote the book, he knew that it was just so important. You know, I knew the image of this strong, macho male being able to talk about things in this candid way and leaving it all out there would be really impactful. But there are areas of this world. We went down to the Bahamas, and a friend of mine, he was the ambassador there for someone. We did a whole island tour and talking about autism, which is pretty prevalent there, and I had no idea. And they're so behind the times. I mean, there are some things they're still doing. You would be appalled. Appalling. But we had Bahamian men with this macho African-American guy saying, you know, I had to tweak my expectations, I had to do this, and they were staring at him with their mouths open, like they're very macho in the islands. And there's still sort of a long way to go. So I realize that there's a lot of advocacy that Rodney can still do around this country and around the world globally. So we're looking forward to. I'm trying to get him out of the house.
All right. Well,
I'm trying to send him out to go to really get out there and talk about it, because he underestimates the impact that he has. He thinks his big mouth wife is the one that does it.
No,
But
you know, and you can tell him what I just relayed to you, how important it was. And I think we should get together when we're not on the air and talk about ways we can get Rodney out there.
Let's do that.
To more fathers. Because I think even a lot of fathers are probably afraid to say, I'm going to hear this talk on, you know, with Rodney Peete about, they would probably love to tell their friends, I'm going to meet Rodney Peete.
Right.
Hear Rodney Peete talk about having a son with autism.
And when we go out together and do speeches, I mean, it's really powerful.
Oh, it's got to be incredible.
We really do sort of walk everybody through the journey, and we do it with humor, and we do it, you know, with candor, and it really helps, because we just ask for a show of hands of families who, you know, are struggling, or husband and wives that are struggling, and every one of them went up.
You're a power couple on a mission, honey.
So it's great to be able to advocate that way, and I love what he's been able to do.
Wonderful.
Do we have time to talk about Holly Rod?
Let's talk about Holly Rod, because we got a bunch of questions and tweets that are coming in that I know everybody wants us to get to. But tell us, for people who don't know about Holly Rod, they should. Tell us about
Holly Rod originally started because my father had Parkinson's disease. My father, for anybody who's over 30, will remember that my dad was the original Gordon on Sesame Street. Started the show, and then went on to write and produce The Cosby Show the whole time. And it's just a great man who was stricken with Parkinson's disease in his 40s, young onset Parkinson's. We started Holly Rod because families were impacted by Parkinson's didn't have anywhere to go to get treatment. So Rodney, being an alum at USC, we started a compassionate care program down there, and that was great. And then somewhere along, maybe 5, 6 years, 7 years after that, we get the diagnosis for autism. We realize we got to. Remember, it took a while to start talking about it. It took a minute to process that publicly, and then we added the mission of autism. And what we do is we help families navigate the diagnosis, and we also provide compassionate care. So our main goal now has been to get these iPads in the hands of these families, kids, so that they can communicate. That's our Gift of Voice program. But, you know, our dream of dreams went down to St. Jude, saw the St. Jude model, and like, where is the St. Jude for autism? Where's that place where families can go and get treatment for their kids and the siblings and the mother and father, the you know, all the therapy we need, a barber shop,
a one-stop shop,
everything for the autism lifestyle, so you don't have to run here, there, Pasadena. Well, we used to go from Pasadena to Santa Monica. I mean,
you got one place OT, one place speech, one place behavior therapy,
everything under one roof. And we're getting very, very, very close to that. And we started a program with Cal State Northridge, which we're very excited about. Ultimately, I think they're going to help us get there. But we're doing an autism network where our families can connect, and where we can at least be a portal when you get this diagnosis. So long ways to go still, but we're just thrilled. We just had our big
fundraiser. Now, if any of you that are in the Southern California area, and I was out of town the last one, but I have been to your Holly Rod Gala.
It's fun.
It is unbelievable. The stargazing is unbelievable. I mean, you're walking in, and Donald Trump is in front of you, and Chris Rock, and Samuel Jackson, and the night itself is so beautiful and so empowering. You have a great fashion show, but then you honor so many of the great advocates
this
in
year we
autism.
honored Justin and Zev from The Amazing Race, and they have this, you know, Zev has Asperger's, and they're friendship is so key. You know, the kids with Asperger's are so brilliant and amazing, but they can't make friends.
Yeah.
And then we honor Brian Grant, who's a former NBA player who has Parkinson's, amazing guy, and Toys R Us for their advocacy. And
they've done so much.
They've been amazing for special needs and so many other causes. But I want to say real quick, because I know we want to get to to my tweeters. We're having a carnival.
Okay.
August 12th.
Okay.
Out at Culver City.
Okay.
At the Culver Studios. We
Open
do
to
this
the
every
public.
year. Open to the public.
Okay.
And you can find information at hollyrod.org.
All right.
About,
and we can put it up on our website.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
Great. We have a lot of families affected by autism there, a lot of kids with autism there. It's a very confined area. Lots of fun sensory stuff for typical and
open to the public.
Open to the public.
And you
It's
and
gonna
Rodney
be
will be there?
Oh yeah, be there with a bunch of our friends.
So it's a chance for all of you to meet these amazing...
It's called My Brother Charlie Family Fun Festival. Say that 40 times.
My Brother Charlie Family Fun
And My Brother
Festival.
Charlie is our book.
The book, which is absolutely wonderful.
I've said
and
so
we
much.
and we have
we
a
haven't
picture.
even gotten to that.
Yes, we haven't gotten to that. And we know you guys are writing in and want us to ask the question. So stick with us. We're going to take a very short break, and we'll be back.
Holly's going to nap.
I'm going to take a nap now. Do you mind?
We'll be right back.
Autism is an epidemic affecting 1 in 88 children. Military families impacted by autism wage a battle on 2 fronts, one for their country, another for their children. Cox Communications is proud to announce an autism film program for military children taking place June 18th to the 29th. The program provides social and life skills to military children with autism and their siblings. To apply or for more information, go to acttodayformilitaryfamilies.org.
Welcome back to Autism Live, and let's talk autism with Shannon and Nancy.
That's a mouthful, too.
That is a mouthful, too. And our very special guest, Holly Robinson Peete. We have a bunch of questions. We've gotten some from Facebook. Some of you are writing in on the autism-live.com, and we've got some tweets that are coming in. I'm having some technical difficulty getting them, and want to tell Tyler to send them over to me as he gets them. But I had a couple of questions that I know that people wanted to ask. One in particular, that a gentleman who was with us last week who authored the book, Mommy, I Wish I Could Tell You What They Did to Me in School Today, specifically wanted to know where your son goes to school, do you have any concerns about how he's being treated, or do you feel comfortable with how that's, and how did you, if you did have concerns about how he was being treated at school, how you would have addressed that?
Well, when he was younger, I had big concerns because he didn't have language. Now that he has language, he doesn't still share everything with me, but I get much more information from him. And he's in public school now. You know, I'm just down there all the time. You know, they know I'm a presence and now I'll show up.
Yes.
I think it's that squeaky wheel thing. When they see you coming, they start rolling their eyes, you know you've done your job.
Yeah.
You know, when they watch, here comes Miss Pete again. So I think it's about being present.
Didn't you make a remark on Celebrity Apprentice that dealing with some of the celebrities was nothing compared to going into an IEP, individual education plan for your child, and deal with those people?
Yeah, you know, only we would understand that. Like
and other moms out there listening, and fathers.
IEPs are, and that's what I mean when I say we. I mean all of us.
All of us.
But IEPs are, those meetings are interesting.
Very.
And they can suck the life out of you. They can be great, and they can be trying and challenging.
Yes.
So yes, after years and years and years of those, the boardroom was nothing.
Yeah, that's right. That'll teach you how to fight for your rights, right?
And what an amazing fundraiser you were on that show. I thought the fundraising was important, but also the awareness that you brought through doing that show. One of the things that somebody tweeted in was that there's a rumor going that you're considering being on Dancing with the Stars. Is that all true?
Well, let me put that one to rest.
You got 2 left feet?
One, well, that, I am a SWR, Sister Without Rhythm.
I didn't know that was possible.
Okay, that is possible. I'm here to troop that A. And B, 1 reality competition per lifetime. Thank you very much. I don't get these people that just hop from one to the next to the next. That's all. I'm good.
Yeah, that was draining.
I love Dance with Stars. I have friends there. I go, I watch it, but I am not about to do that.
Okay. All right. We'll put that rumor to rest.
Another person who wrote in and said, what are some good ways to get autistic children to focus? What are some games that help? Any ideas would be great. They wanted to ask you.
Games. You know, to be honest with you, none are hitting me off the top of my head. I used to probably be super well versed in that, but I am involved in the Autism Meets Adolescence place right now, and so that's sort of my main focus. Like if you'd asked me that question 5-6 years ago, I'd been like giving you 15 websites. But at this point, like my main focus is just dealing with puberty plus autism, which is a whole nother set of challenges.
Well, I'm sure there are parents listening today that are facing that. Do you have some words of wisdom and guidance for them?
Well, you know, you have all these things that you have to navigate, and the first one being, do you go down a pharmacological path? Do you not? What are the pros? What are the cons? So that's sort of where we are right now.
We just started Wyatt, who is going to be 11, on a small amount of an serotonin reuptaker. It is helping him. We held that, you know, we did all the biomed and we held out. But it's helping a bit, we think. You know, we're being very cautious.
You want to give them what tools they need to focus in school and all of that. So I think everybody's situation is different. But I think the hardest part for us has been social media. My son doesn't communicate real well if he's sitting right here in front of you. But on social media, he has a sense of freedom because he's not making eye contact. So we want that. But boy, do we have to helicopter over that kid. And we have to monitor
what sites and what, you know, who
it's a chance for him to be social. And we don't want to limit that. But by the same token, as you know, we all know what Facebook can do in this world. You know, we're raising kids in the Facebook generation, and it's a whole nother situation.
And then let's talk about relationships with the opposite sex.
Oh yeah, and then there's that. So I'm trying to get him to understand as an adolescent, you know, what he can and cannot say to girls. How he can approach them. His twin sister's very helpful with that. You know, these are all things that we didn't know we would have to deal with. And we knew we would eventually, but we weren't really prepared for it. So I'm constantly asking my friends whose kids with autism are in their 20s. You know, what else do I have to look forward to?
I do the same thing.
How can I head this off at the pass?
I do the same thing. I have to say, one of the funniest things that Jenny McCarthy said at the recent Autism One conference that she did was she's praying for her little boy to come home with hickeys on his neck. Whereas most parents are like, you know, watch out. She is praying for that moment where she could go, yes!
Yeah, well, and not to take the funny out of that, but the issue that I'm worried about is sexual harassment.
Well, yes.
You know, all the seriousness about when you start relationships with girls. There's a gentleman who we all heard about recently who, you know, went to jail for years because a young lady who now is like, oops, I didn't mean it. You know, said he raped her when he was 16, you know, and so now he's putting his life back together. So because our kids have trouble socially connecting and they're a little bit awkward when it comes to, you know, the things that are going on at school now sexually, I'm very concerned. So I hover over that kid like, he's like, do you have something to do? But I'm so nervous because the wrong thing.
At the wrong time.
They say the wrong thing, touch the wrong place. Somebody look up and go, oh, you know, who are your parents? I mean, you can't even imagine. So, I want him to have, you know, I want him to be able to experiment and do all the things that teenage boys do, but he's got to be careful.
Well, you know, this is an important area. I think it's an important area for us to talk about on the show. I think it's important for anybody that's experts on this to speak up and get out there. And I think it's something for Dr. Doreen Graham-Pichet probably has many programs right now that she's working on to help these preteens and teens navigate behavior.
Can I just say that I wish I had this resource of you two when we got our diagnosis in 2000.
I wish that I had it because I didn't have it, and so that's part of the reason why we're here.
Well, thank you for doing that, because families who are just getting the diagnosis today, to be able to go on their internet and see people having this kind of dialogue.
I know.
Thank you. On behalf of everybody we serve.
Thank you, Holly. Like Shannon and I both said, you are definitely a rock star to us. You are a role model, and we just admire you so much.
Absolutely, and not to belittle that, but I got all the tweets now.
Okay, fabulous.
So for families with a child on the spectrum, does it get better? You know, we've been having all this discussion about how it gets better recently in the news, and they want to know, does it get better?
You know, every family is different, but I will say what gets better is our access to information and our ability to talk about it. So just that alone makes it better. The acceptance is getting better. When people accept you for who you are, you're automatically in a better situation. And you know, children with autism don't know how to be anything else but sincere. And when you have a sincere child in an environment where people are accepting of what's going on with him, that's automatically better. So yes, I think it does get better.
Okay, I agree.
And as you said, the access to information.
Yes. Resources, huge.
Yeah. I mean, when Wyatt was diagnosed, there was, University of Google, and that was about it.
Yeah.
Right.
One of the things that somebody asked earlier up in the scroll here was about ABA, and that, you said in a blog last year that I quote all the time on this show, the top 8 things that you wish the world knew.
Right.
And number 1 was that no one can afford autism. And I always say, if Holly Robinson Peete says that no one can afford it, then we can all forgive ourselves for the fact that we can't afford it.
Right.
And somebody was saying not everybody has access or can afford ABA, but I believe that's why you have an organization to help people.
Well, yeah, that is exactly what we're trying to do, is, help people get access to this type of behavioral therapy and to be able to try others. Because ABA is, what the gold standard, but we did a hybrid of ABA and floor time and a little RDI thrown in.
Right.
I mean, we felt like that worked for us. But what if you can't afford to, shop around and try new stuff? So these are the things we're trying to help families with.
And that was somebody else's question about what kinds of therapy did you
do? And what age did you start Rodney with his behavior therapy?
Right away.
Right away.
I mean, oh yeah, immediately.
He got the diagnosis at what
3
age?
years old.
At 3. Okay.
And so immediately we started him doing everything.
Right.
But I immediately noticed this Hatfield-McCoy's thing going on in ABA versus floor time and this one versus that. And I was like, oh, y'all gonna pull me up in all this.
Yeah.
I need to do what I think is best for my kid. And I was going on just pure mother adrenaline.
Instinct, which is always right, though.
But it seemed to work out for him. And but for families, they just have to, so much of going with the gut, that you have to do. And that can be really scary.
It is scary, but I do believe in almost all cases a parent's gut is the best possible litmus test for what to do.
Yes. If your gut says it's wrong and it's not working, chances are as a parent you're right on.
Somebody else wants to know, was it hard being away from your kids when you were on Celebrity Apprentice?
The hardest thing.
I bet.
The hardest thing.
How long did you have to be away from them?
I was a full month or so, a little over a month in New York in October, November. It was hard. It was hard, but and that's another reason why
Why you're not doing Dancing with the Stars?
Yeah.
Ding, 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 ding. What
a shame. I would enjoy that so much.
So basically, you're looking for that day job that allows you to stay
sort of
here.
like the one I had.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Well, somebody asked here on the list, are you thinking about doing your own talk show?
Listen, I loved doing the talk. I'll just, that's the elephant in the room. I loved it.
We loved
and
you on it.
I loved the platform. I loved everything about it, and I did my absolute best to do everything I was asked to do. And sometimes things don't work out, but the reality is I'm not spooked away from doing another talk show.
Okay.
It wasn't that bad a situation that it made me go, oh, never in my life.
Good.
Whereas like the reality thing, it's a different story.
Yeah.
But I think I have a lot of people that have been, pretty interested in me doing some more daytime, and I love that. There also is a chance we may think about doing, when I say reality, I mean reality competition.
Right.
There may be a chance of doing some family reality situation. That's also,
awesome.
I would love that because I think, again, it's a platform and it's a chance to have a sort of a different kind of family out there in the reality airwaves.
Yes.
Yeah.
You have a lot of families out there that, don't always reflect the values and things that
of what's really going on out there in America.
Yeah, maybe a little bit more relatable. So that's something that's on the.
Well, it's interesting. We see so much dysfunction, and it would be so interesting for you to redefine normal.
And well, now we got a little dysfunction too, and whose family doesn't?
Well, everybody does.
But the good news is I think I haven't seen, in looking on the reality landscape, a family since maybe Run's House, which was, I used to love that show on MTV. So that's something that we're working on too. So it's been exciting seeing the new things, out there. But daytime TV, definitely, I would love to get back into.
Okay.
And Mike and Molly, I'm going to go back to that show as well. And that was
wonderful.
fun. Yeah.
How fabulous. We love you.
Lots of stuff to do.
Lots of stuff to do. Okay, a couple of more questions that we have here. Somebody who says, and you've addressed this a little bit, but do you think that most people are ignorant to the growing epidemic of autism, and how can we change this?
Well, again, we did talk about this. That was one of the reasons why I wanted to call out 50 Cent, because I wanted people to understand that, how prevalent this thing is. 1 in 88, 1 in 54 boys. We're talking about a major emergency here, and we're not paying as much attention. It doesn't match the prevalence, you know?
No.
It really doesn't.
It does not.
So I think we have a lot more work to do awareness-wise, but it sure is a lot different from when we got our diagnosis.
Absolutely.
So each year and with each situation, we bring more people into the fold. But it's each one reach one sort of scenario. Sometimes we have to not only educate rappers and talk show hosts, but we also have to talk to our parents and our in-laws and cousins, and so you just in your own community, the more you can do to get rid of the stigma, the better.
Grassroots,
absolutely. And what about, you know, is there a chance we might see you doing advocacy in Washington? Is there a chance we might see you?
I have a good friend who is in the Obama administration who's at the White House named Mike Stroutmanis.
I met Mike.
Mike's awesome.
Yes.
And we've talked about doing something. He has a son on the spectrum.
Yes, he does.
He's been a tremendous advocate in the White House for autism. He's been behind the scenes working some great stuff.
Good.
So I would love to do some work with Mike, and you know, they're all focused on re-election right now.
Of course.
Once that's all over, and if you know he gets back in, or even if he doesn't, I would be down to be some sort of, you know, global whatever, you know, ambassador.
I think that'd be fantastic, and I think that we do need a federal response to this epidemic.
We do. Absolutely. It's a little
It's got to
lacking.
be more done, and the president, I think, being a very smart man, must realize that with these numbers, 1 in 54 boys, his constituents have a big concern about this.
Yeah, they do.
And not only that, the economic impact down the line on our country. We've got to get our kids employed.
Yeah, there's that too. You know, as my son's going to be 15 soon, and we talk about, you know, what his future's going to look like, not only with his relationships, but how is he going to make it in this world?
Right.
We always have that conversation as a family, and we try to get a team around him to try to make this an easier transition. But we know that the adult autism unemployment rate is somewhere around 90%, if it's not higher than that. So we have much work to be done in that area as well.
What are your hopes for your son?
Happiness, you know, gainful employment. A village around him of people who get him and understand him. I mean, come on, the biggest issue that I still wake up sort of a little bit in having nightmares about what happens when I'm gone, and will he be okay? I mean, it's every parent, not just autism parent.
Yeah,
you know,
but
like,
certainly
our
every
kids are going to be able
needs.
to, you know, stand up on their own.
Right.
But with the kids with special needs, it's a whole nother energy. And I also worry about him socially. Being out there socially, with this whole Trayvon Martin thing that happened, that freaked me out because so now, you know, I walk him through what happens if the police come up to you and, you know, you're a black kid wearing this hoodie, walking around, you know, this neighborhood, which he does every day. And I give him things that he can do because I want him to feel independent. So, I mean, we walk through drills. So I have a lot of fears, but I have a lot of positivity and a lot of what's the word?
Hope.
Thank you. That's what I'm looking for.
What it is.
Hope for his future, because I think he's an amazing kid, and I believe that the community around him is going to support him.
If you look back when he was 3 and you first got the diagnosis, would you ever have dreamed you would have come this far with him?
Oh my gosh, I mean, that day was, we call it the never day, because no one ever, the lady, isn't that awful? I didn't really care for the pediatric developmental pediatrician that I was. I shouldn't say that if she's watching.
No, we all have those people.
It's
a hard moment. Come on.
It's a tough moment, but I think you got to give a parent some hope.
Yes.
You cannot have them tell them they'll never do this, your kid will never do that, he'll never say this. So when I see him now, I have hope, and I like to share that story because what if we bought into that?
Yeah. Seriously.
That's such an important story for our families that are listening today that maybe just got the diagnosis, maybe have nonverbal. You say Rodney was nonverbal?
He was. He had very
age?
little verbal skills.
To what age?
But his verbal skills really started meaningful conversation and circles of conversation around 9 or 10.
Okay, so listen up, parents. Here is an example of the kind of achievements, the kind of miracles that can happen. They happen to Holly Robinson Peete. They can happen to you.
Absolutely.
And you know what? And I know we've got to go. And the only thing I would add to that, and if it doesn't happen, if you end up with an adult child that is not verbal, there are so many ways,
of course,
functional communication
that you can we can get their voices heard, and that's
absolutely.
So it is getting better.
It is getting better. Thank you so much.
Thank
you have been such a
you.
delight.
I have to go.
Yeah, I know.
I know.
We look like
We'll
I'm
do
here
the rest
longer.
of my
We can.
day. I said we talked 5 minutes. You're going to go take a nap and then get on that 20
I want to remind
list.
I want to remind our viewers, as this show ends, the conversation continues. Please stay in touch with us via email, Twitter, and Facebook. We'll be back tomorrow with Dr. Adele Nadowski talking about behavior champs, so you'll want to be with us for then. Thank you again to Holly Robinson Peete and to Nancy
Holly.
Jackson.
Thank you, Shannon.
And please give your kiddos a hug from us.
And
Bye-bye.
love them today.
That's right.